right. Good morning, Jason.
Good morning. Is it morning? It is morning, yes.
It is morning.
Last time we did this was later.
Late afternoon, early evening. To those listening, hello, welcome. My name is RJ, and I'm here with my co-host, Jason. And today we are beginning this lovely conquest across the large galaxies we know it, the Imperium of Man, reviewing and reading the Horus Heresy. Our objectives are quite simple. We are going to create a very fun, laid-back, and objective review of not just the Warhammer universe as we know it, which, believe me, is huge. It's impossible to have that expansive of a show talking about that whole universe. Our goal here is simple and concise. We're going to talk about the novels, the books, the paper, ink and pen story on what happened in the 30K. We're going to talk about the story, the characters, things we like, things we don't like, how the story is told, and how it created this huge, huge lore dump that has become actually very popular and relevant culturally. And I'm going to introduce my co-host now, who...
Wait, but what's the podcast called?
And we are called the Heresy Hangout.
No, that was good.
And it's simple.
Yeah.
It's really simple. We're going to do 2 points of view here. Jason here is our SME subject matter expert. Jason, you want to tell him a bit about your resume?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, expert is the right decision. It's more nerdy, obsessed kind of thing. So as a young kid, I was like 12-ish, 13, I always like Dungeons & Dragons was fun. A little too involved for my taste, though. So, and then I was over in the city, and I saw at the time they were called Games Workshops, not Warhammer stores. Now they're called Warhammer stores. But the models really struck me, so I go in the store and infatuate the models. And at the time, I was like, I liked the fantasy, like the swords and bows and arrows and stuff. So that's what got me at first. And I kind of painted, and I didn't really play the game much. It really painted and all. And then fast forward, probably like in my early 20s, and I kind of like in and out of it because it's an expensive hobby. And then in my early 20s, me and a buddy of mine decided to buy a starter box of one of the 40K ones. I forget. It was like Tyranids versus Ultramarines. I forget which edition that is, but that whole time though, I was like always reading the books, and probably in the early 2000s, I really started getting into the Horus Heresy. I think it's when it came out. We'll cover that in a minute. But yeah, so I got into that and just reading books as much as I could, even when I got out of the hobby side of it, like painting and playing, depending on where I was in my life, not time, money, whatever, I would always read the book. So I probably read this book we're going to cover today probably like 5-6 times because it's just pretty easy to read. And if you're into it, it's like really cool because it's kind of like you play this game, or you paint the models, or you're into it. You watch the videos, you play video games, whatever. This is like, it's like reading the history. So if you're into history, it's like reading the history of this fake world, which is like the nerdiest thing you think of. Like you're reading history books on worlds that don't exist.
On science fiction universe.
And then to take it to another level with the internet now, it's like you can go on and people will argue over the history. Oh, this didn't happen. It's like, oh, what are we doing here? This is crazy. This is like, it's not even real. But so just a couple additions. Obviously, just spoilers. So if your friend or whoever recommends this podcast to you and you haven't read the books, that's cool. But just understand that you're gonna get the whole story. We're gonna go through every chapter, all the characters, everything. So we're not gonna hold back because this came out in the early 2000s. So if you haven't read it yet, you can listen to this and feel like you read it. You can feel smart. You know what I mean? So, but so quick, just if someone's a newbie, so this is gonna cover, like I said, the history. RJ mentioned 30K, so when we say that, this is covering the history of the game system that is known as Warhammer 40,000. So this series will take place in the 30,000 time frame. So 10,000 years before the game that is played now, Space Marine 2 is coming out. So if you're a fan of video games, you play that game, that stuff that we're talking about today happened like 10,000 plus years in the past. So that's kind of the backstory. So to get into like where this came from, it says it's a game, all right? So in the 80s, there was these English nerds who were into like D&D and stuff like that, but they kind of wanted to do their own thing. So they made like a sci-fi kind of like D&D. It wasn't a war game. If it wasn't like a tabletop war game, it was like Dungeons and Dragons in a sense. So, but this series covers what's called the Horus Heresy, and it's simple. It's just like a civil war between these badass generals and the baddest of all generals, the Emperor of Mankind. So
You'll need to unlock your iPhone first.
oh, that was weird.
Yeah, Jason, you need to unlock your iPhone first.
But okay, so back in 1988, in a little like extra compendium book to make your games more cool, your little sci-fi games of space warriors and space elves and all, there was a little dialogue box that just mentions the Horus Heresy. This is like the first time you would see it even mentioned. And as to quote the book, it says, "The Horus Heresy is by many to rate as the greatest single disaster ever suffered by the Imperium. The specific details of the heresy are only known to the Emperor, but its broader history is the stuff of legend. According to one version of the tale, Horus was once the most trusted servant of the Emperor, but in his heart there dwelt a hidden evil, and he became seduced by this evil, and came to nurture demons and other forces of destruction. Horus marched upon Earth with a third part of the host of the Imperium, which he had seduced to his purpose. For 7 days and 7 nights, the host battled until the Emperor caught Horus by the heel and cast him into the Eye of Terror, and with him the third part of the host of the Imperium." So that's kind of like a little nutshell, but that's where it started. That's where some guy, maybe a couple guys, whatever. I'm pretty sure they're guys. They probably weren't girls. They thought of this. Fast forward a couple years, another compendium book called Slaves of Darkness introduces demons. So now it's kind of like a new thing. So now you think of demons, you think of like Lord of the Rings, Balrog, monsters, stuff like that. But this is like kind of adding monsters and spooky wizardry stuff into sci-fi. So in this compendium called Slaves of Darkness, it introduces demons, the traitor legions, so the bad guys. It expands the Horus Heresy. It mentions Horus as the War Master, so like the head general. His fall on a planet called Davin. It mentions a planet called Istavan, a ship called the Eisenstein, and it talks about the Emperor of Mankind leaving his golden throne to battle Horus. So to the uninitiated, that might not mean much, but if you know about the history of it, these are all little pellets of like knowledge that they'll take and expand even more as time goes on. And it's kind of like, it's really commercially driven because these guys are making this for fun for their buddies. They're selling more, and then as people start liking this stuff more, they had to like flesh it out. They're like, well, people want more, so what is a War Master? What is Davin? We just made that up. You know what I mean? We just said Davin. You know what I mean? Like, so these books start expounding on that as we go because people wanted that stuff. We fast forward even further into 1996. So the Codex Chaos is made. So a codex is, in this term, it's all these games have different armies, and their books that have all the rules for the armies are called codex. So you have Codex Imperium, so that in that little book will have all your little rules to have your little tanks and your little army men. And 1996 was the first time they released the Codex the Chaos, so this is the bad guys. It lets you play the bad guys. In that book, it kind of retells the story, fleshes it out some more. Talks about the traitor legions, the bad guys. And over time, up until the 2000s, the story evolves into coming from the Games Workshop monthly magazine called White Dwarf. So White Dwarf is a magazine that covers like their models. They'll throw stories in there, and then in there they would throw like little modules that you can play your games, and it would flesh out this Horus Heresy more. So if you're into that stuff, you can like read that, and it gives you little rules to play little battles in that realm. But the big thing was 2003. So 2003, the Horus Heresy collectible card game comes out. So I can only assume that they were trying to capitalize on Magic the Gathering, like card style games, because I think this is the first card game they ever made. So they thought, okay, let's make a card game in that setting, and then from there they needed to have art, they need to have stories. So they hired professional artists, writers to start making like fleshing out characters that were there, but also making characters, and And then every little card had like this cool little art of like who this person is. And so that a lot of the characters you see in these books are coming from that card game where they hired someone to be like, hey, we need a bunch of good guys and they got to be kind of like this. And then, you know, they make them and they flesh them out. Later on, some art books come out expanding the story. Talks about the Webway. Gives a background on the Sisters of Silence, the Custodes, the Mechanicum. And in that art book, there's like a famous picture of Horus versus the Emperor. We have it here. If you're on YouTube, you can see it. And you've probably seen it if you're into this stuff. So it's like this crazy, you know, picture of when Horus and the Emperor face off. It's done by Adrian Smith, who's like a renowned artist in the Warhammer scene. So he makes all types of stuff. So, like, what do we got here? What are we looking at here, RJ?
I mean, so, like... And again, it's a beautiful picture that if you are at all familiar with the Warhammer universe, I've definitely seen. But you're seeing quite literally one of the best moments to capture what you're getting yourself into with this area of fiction. You're looking at a man in glistening, absolutely massive, overly done, ornamental armor, who with a glowing halo and a fire sword. And he's staring at a very dark, large figure in the corner with a massive red ring around his head, a giant red eye on his chest, and a huge power glove that if you didn't know anything about anyone, you could very much tell who's the bad guy, who's the good guy. Yeah. And then also there's a quite literal, spoilers again, bleeding angel on the ground. Yeah. It's this hilarious, and then over the top is the least invasive term I could use to describe this whole universe. It is so overdone, so overkill. I mean, I love it. It's everything that has captured me to get myself into this entire universe. It's so beyond comprehension that you forget that you're looking at this picture and each one of these guys are 12 to 15 feet tall.
Yeah.
They're giants. And this picture, it, like I said, captures what you're getting yourself into. And it was just casually released by the company. They're like, hey, we need to create some sort of just artwork out there to give a better picture of what we're looking at and who these characters are. And you casually just captured everything that you need to know.
Yeah, I don't know if it's, it was 2005-ish, so I don't know if it's digital or not. In my head, in my romantic version, it's like an oil painting. You know what I mean? I don't know, though. But yeah, so like, if you showed it to someone who's like in the least bit into science fiction, it would like, you know, make them go crazy. Because, yeah, it's just like blatantly who the bad guy, good guy, but it just looks so crazy. You know what I mean? It's like just, and I think the aesthetic, it captures it. Because I always thought of like, you know, there's so many sci-fi genres out there, Star Wars, Star Trek and all. And like, I always thought this one was so different because, as you'll see, if you listen to all our books, and then if you dive deeper into the artwork, you'll see it's like this such amalgamation of like science fiction, because we're in space. You know, there's no doubt in that. You're in space. We're talking about universes, galaxies, and all. But I feel like the characters and the look is so like archaic. You know, like no one's like sleek like a Star Trek uniform. You know, everyone's like clunky. You know what I mean? But not in a bad way. Like it works so perfect. These guys look like, you know, like King Arthur and his knights, but they're on spaceships. You know what I mean? And then you add in like most of these guys are like 10, 12, 15 foot tall. You know what I mean? Like, so then you add that science in. They're all genetically enhanced, all this stuff. But it's always grabbed me when I really started looking into like going from the fantasy side, because the fantasy version of Warhammer is very fantasy. It's very like why can't Tolkien? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like you know, taken from that. But the science fiction part really grabbed me because it's like they took those elements of Tolkien, because there's elves in here. You know, there's goblins. Well, not goblins, orcs. You know what I mean? But like everything's like just to the max. You know what I mean? Like instead of the guys wearing some kind of like, you know, oh well, you know, we're in space, so we have like force fields. It's like, well, they have force fields too, but they have like, you know, we're gonna wear, you know, steel plate armor. You know what I mean? Like, and shoulder pauldrons. I always find that funny. Like sometimes the older art was like the shoulders are so huge that how would you even see?
You can't look to the right or left.
Shoot. You know, but yeah, it's just a great picture. Adrian Smith. If you Google him, he's got tons of pictures, but that's like his most famous one. You know, I've seen it displayed on people's walls as wallpaper on computers, but I would like to look into that, see if that's a digital. I don't know. Probably is. I mean, because it's so much quicker. But like I said, in my head, it's like some kind of amazing oil painting.
Oh, I mean,
and it's in the Louvre or something.
Yeah. And then there's an original, right? So this was the...
Yeah, so I have here the original. We can show that up on YouTube. So a couple years before that, I think 1990. So you have another one, and it's cool. You know what I mean? It's definitely cool. But it's cool also you can see the evolution of his art as, you know, go from 1990 to 2005, how he got better at his art. You know what I mean? Like, because that looks cool. But and I wonder, same thing. Now we're talking 90s. So that probably is like a pencil drawing, which would be amazingly impressive if that's like a graphite pencil drawing. But I don't see how else, because we're talking, I think that was 1990. So we don't have... I mean, I think Photoshop existed, but I don't think people are drawing like that on Photoshop.
Yeah, your graphic design capabilities on the computer, you know, is limited.
And I know it's possible. You know, like my wife does a lot of pencil drawings, portraits, and I look at stuff she does, and it's amazing. You know what I mean? Like, so you can do it, but that's really impressive. But yeah, so this it's the same scene. It's just a little more like they seem a little smaller, like the guys on the screen or on the painting. The armor's a little more bulky. It's less. It's like, even though the pose is the same, it feels a little less, like, it's more static.
I think so. Yeah. When I never saw the original going into this, and then obviously we started doing our research, and I started actually pouring myself into every little nook and cranny that I could find on information on this whole entire universe. And Jason showed me this picture, and my first response was, "Oh, this looks like the pencil drawing from some metalhead in junior high." And he drew this bald, looked like a metal drummer in power armor, and he's staring at a guy who's, like I said earlier, clearly a bassist with long black hair, and he's holding a giant sword, and there's a moon in the background. Like, it's so, again, perfect. Like, obviously the artwork and quality has changed over the years, but you got to picture yourself, you're in the 90s, you're creating this exceptionally nerdy universe, like, and you tell an artist, hey, draw the most over-the-top, ridiculous sci-fi warriors facing off. By the way, they're in space, and like there's a dead angel on the ground. This is what you're going to get. And then as this whole entire lore and fiction grew, you can see the change in quality, the change in direction they wanted to go with the art, with the characters. I mean, you have infinite amounts of lore developed from the original painting and picture to what we have now, a Michelangelo quality painting of just capturing this moment in, again, fictional lore that never actually happened, but is willing to spark countless fights across the internet because people didn't like how his wings were real or not real. No one really knows. But it is something that is hilarious that you can look at this little blip of really crappy, in my opinion, sci-fi drawing to one of the most capturing sci-fi pictures in fiction right now.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so let's move into the book we're going to talk about. So the first book we're covering, and the first book of the series, is Horus Rising. It was released in April 2006, written by Dan Abnett. So Dan Abnett was a graduate of Oxford University, lives in England. So like I said, so now it's 2006. We're going to really, make these stories like mean something. So, we're not just hiring Bob down the street who wrote the original stuff. Like, we're getting some real people. So a little background on his pedigree here. So he said Oxford University. He's a famous writer for Marvel and DC. So he's written books, Guardians of the Galaxy, Punisher, X-Men, Legion of Superheroes. I'm not a big DC guy, but that was on his bio. And then for Black Library, which is the publishing house of the Horus Heresy and all of the Games Workshop books, he's wrote the Gaunt's Ghost series, which is like super famous. Eisenhorn series, also super famous. And then in the Horus Heresy, he's written the book Legion, Prospero Burns, No Fear, Unremembered Empire, and The End and the Death, volumes 1 through 3. So the End and the Death is I think it's 7. I'm not sure. It's the end of this story. So I forgot to mention, but this series is 64 novels. All right, and the painting we talked about is the climax. And if you know about this stuff, you know how it ends. All right, you play the game, you know how it ends. You know who won. You know, like, what happened. But it's never been fleshed out fully. So when they made these series, they said, hey, we're going to start it, we're going to flesh it out. But it's a money machine. So 2006 until 2024, they've been cranking them out, and they finally decided to finish them. And they finished them in this grand crescendo. Like I said, I think it's 7 to 8. It's a lot. It's a lot of books called The End of the Death. The Siege of Terra series is the actual whole series. So now there's like 8 books that talk about, flesh out the final battle of this guy Horus, who is like the head general, and the Emperor, who's obviously the leader of all humanity. So they finally finish it. I don't know what they're going to do next. You know, I have no idea. Like, I mean, it's over. Obviously, I mean, you could write side stories, and a lot of these books are. As we go through, if we run this podcast for a while, you'll see it's not like book 1 to book 64 is this continuous story. There's books that jump off and talk about someone else. There's books that jump off and talk about other topics, all kind of like inside this web of the Horus Heresy. Somehow it all connects. That's what's cool about it, because I'll read books where I'm like, well, this is like, you know, I heard it's a side book or something, but you'll read it and then there'll be a couple things in there that like, that's how, you know, you start connecting like Charlie Day with the
He's
string.
Got the string on the board.
You know, like you're reading a book that's like, you know, Nemesis. You're reading a book about like, it's assassins, but you're like, well, they tried to assassinate Horus. You know what I mean? Like stuff like that. So it kind of like bing, bing, it all connects somehow, and they're good at it. You know, some books are better than others. But Dan Abnett, so he's like the first guy. So they let him, you know, the end. Siege of Terror, they kind of like handpick their like best dudes. You know, you got like Dan Abnett's in there, Aaron Dembski-Bowden's in there. What's the other guy's name? I forget his name. I don't know, top of my head. But there's another guy named John or something. I'm sorry, Graham McNeil. Graham McNeil's in there. So all their heavy hitters are in there. But of his books, Legion's really good. Prospero Burns is really good. Unremembered Empire is super cool. It's like this weird side story, but it also ties back in. So before we open the book, let's talk about the cover.
Yeah, let's look at the book. So let's look at the book.
Yeah.
I'm a firm believer in judging a book by its cover. I don't care what anyone else says. If you don't have the ability to make a first opinion, you're a coward. Looking at this book, again, you're looking at
it's like metalheads.
Metalheads. You're looking at absolutely juiced up, just these huge men in absolutely colossal armor, holding massive guns and swords. Obviously, the main characters aren't wearing helmets because how else are you supposed to sell that face, baby?
I don't even know if these are any of the main. In my head, these are not.
No, yeah, they're just dudes.
These are just dudes.
They're just dudes.
Because, like, in my head, the main characters have a certain look. And, yeah, it's not these guys.
Yeah.
These guys are just, like, some dudes.
They look like, the peasants, the line guard that is just there to lay the hurt for the Emperor. Yeah. If you, again, are looking online or on YouTube, you can see we'll put the picture up, but you're staring at a bunch of gray, they're called Marines, Space Marines. If you don't know it, I mean, that's why we're here. These are the guys who make the bread and butter for Games Workshop. This is what we're painting. This is what we're selling, baby. But they're right here on the cover, and they again, Dan Abnett tells a hell of a story, and Games Workshop knows exactly what they're doing. They put these guys front and center. You got guys screaming, smiling at the camera. They got scars on their face. One guy's wearing a leather hat, like he's a blacksmith from the Dark Ages.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. Like, so it has this smashing of like different styles. So so we're in space, all this stuff, but you look in the background, it's like a castle. You know what I mean? It looks like a castle. It doesn't look like a military base. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't look like some kind of fob or something. It looks like
a cathedral.
Yeah, it's like some big castle. And then obviously you see like, rockets and all. So we're talking, advanced military war fighting. But like you said, there's guys with guns, big ass guns, but they got swords.
They got swords.
So it's like, and then the armor from an untrained eye, you're just like, oh, these guys look like King Arthur and his knights. You know what I mean? But the armor is like nuclear powered and all this stuff. You know what I mean?
And you got jetpacks in the background. You got like power, like I said, power gauntlets and guns, and it's like, wait, that gun's the size of a car, but it's in one hand. Doesn't really make sense, but I like it. They are not subtle. Subtlety is nothing to do with Warhammer, that is what I'm about. Again, so Jason here is our subject matter expert. I am a newbie. In terms of Warhammer, newbie, which means I've only delved into the lore for the last 8 months of my life and done nothing else, and still barely scratched the surface. And so what we want to do is create this very contrasting. Jason having a very fleshed out view on everything, and then me having a very new view. Again, not totally naive, not totally coming in blind. I have been watching infinite YouTube videos, but yeah, we're just gonna tell you how I see it and how Jason sees it, and then we're gonna really pour into how they presented this book and this series to us as readers. And yeah, this cover, hell of an introduction. I love it. Judge a book by its cover. I encourage everyone to do that, but don't let it change your opinion on the actual subject matter that you're reading. But it is fun to do. Judge a book. It's important.
Well, yeah, because if you see the book or cover, I think it looks cool, but it does kind of hokey. You know what I mean? So you might be like,
you're like,
oh, this is like just like, you know, some kind of like
airport book that you want to just...
or like back when I was younger, they'd have drugstore books. You know what I mean? Like that, like it's just like, you know, something to read. But it's out, you know, it's, you know, like I said, we talked about the pedigree of the author. You know what I mean? Like they really put into it, and the book is deep, and it's good. And most of the books I've read in this series are like, I haven't found one I hate. You know what I mean? But they're all like well written and thoughtful. I'm no expert, you know what I'm saying? But I've read a lot of books, and I definitely read like your drugstore, your airport book, which is like, hey, it's a 3-hour time killer. You know what I mean? And these really aren't it. They have a couple scenes like that where it's like action, because that is also like their bread and butter, because we're talking about genetically enhanced superhumans fighting each other. So then they'll do that, but there's a lot insight, deep thought into like these guys and gals like purpose, what it all means. And you know, the series obviously is like about betrayal, but it's not as simple as like, I want to be the boss. You know what I mean? It goes deep into like, you know, what are you? What is your purpose? What are we doing? You know, all that stuff, and it kind of dives deep into that stuff. So it's really, it's, you know, the cover, you know, passing glance, you'd be like, oh, you know, like, you know, you might not even read it. I don't know. You know what I mean? But like, it's cool looking, but it might be a little off-putting. You might think it's just like a trashy book, but it's not. It's good.
It's Oxford educated.
Oxford educated, yeah.
Oxford
exactly.
educated.
Yeah, Oxford educated.
$1 million industry they're pouring into this.
Yeah.
No, it's
that's even good. Oxford educated.
It's hilarious how there's nothing in this entire series is without thought, without planning. Everything is very specific. And everything from the cover to the most minute chapter is pushing the story, which is why my opinion on this very first book is there's nothing that's not propelling the story forward. It is extremely driven to, even though there's 60 odd books, we are trying our best to just, and Dan does a great job, Mr. Dan Abnett does a great job of just propelling you through this extremely deep water, and does a great job to make you feel like you're not drowning. So, on that, let's get into it, man. Let's do it.
All right. So, starts off part 1 is called Deceived. And we'll start with chapter 1. Take it off.
All right. So, part 1, The Deceived. I was there the day Horus slew the Emperor. Again, that's the first line.
I like that.
It was the first line on the introduction. So, chapter 1 opens up, and again, my favorite way to start a story. There's a campfire, there's the boys, and a man laughing saying, I was there the day Horus slew the Emperor. All right, cool. Case closed. Close the book. That's,
which
you're
is
done.
I always wonder if Dan Abnett wrote that as a little like you know, this whole part that we're going to talk about, like, you know, him slaying the Emperor. I wonder if he wrote that in the sense of like a little like high five to the people who are already in this world and like know, you know, because obviously you would imagine like this book is 400 plus pages. This can't be how it starts. But he's like, hey man, you've been around a while. You know how this ends. Like, hey, here, because like if you're new to this, you have no idea. You just open up and be like,
I opened this book. I'm like, oh wow, he's doing a little Memento, starting from the front, going to the back, a little David Lynch action. I was like, okay, cool. No, it fun, like Jason said, a little fun bamboozle. Tip of the hat to the guys who know, and if you don't know, you don't know. And I definitely did not know.
Yeah, it's kind of good.
So chapter 1, you open up. Narrator starts talking about how he was there when Horus slew the Emperor, and then it quickly, very, very quickly, clarifies everyone's laughing, it's a good time. Not the Emperor of Man. Not the capital E Emperor.
Yeah, so as we go through this, I usually, just to save time speaking words, I'll probably say Big E.
Big E, yep.
That's usually what I'll say when I'm referring to the Emperor. So I'm going to say the Emperor a billion times.
Yeah, he's a reoccurring thing, if you haven't noticed. So we open up, campfire, boys are talking, joking. We get some names thrown around. So story was a good one. Torgodon would usually be the one to cajole him into telling it. For Torgodon was the Joker, a man of mighty laughter and idiot tricks. So there, boom, first character introduced, reoccurring theme. And then we get our narrator. Loken would tell it again. A tale rehearsed through so many retellings, it's almost told itself. So we get Loken. He's going to be our protagonist, I would say.
Yeah, so I would say, like, he's narrating the story. He's not the narrator the whole time, right? Like, the book's, like, it's not him telling the entire book.
Yeah. No.
Yeah. But yeah, no, he's the main character.
100%.
I would say. I mean,
Yeah.
so, 64 books, there's so many, all the books will change characters and all, but for this book, you're kind of like, it's kind of like he's not telling the whole story, but you're kind of seeing through his lens because you're watching his experiences as all this stuff unfolds, and he's like, air quotes, the good guy.
Yeah.
The good guy is always a rough term in the Warhammer.
In the
world,
Warhammer universe, it's easy to know who the good guy is. It's no one.
Yeah, there is no good guy directly. But I would say, I mean, like from reading all these books, like Logan's pretty close.
I would say
to like
Logan's the closest thing you get to an actual good guy.
Yeah.
At least until near the end of the series, we start getting a little gray.
Yeah.
But what's the world without a little gray? So we keep going. He gets cajoled into telling the story about one of the many campaigns and times that he was fighting shoulder to shoulder with his big bro, Horus. Again, Dan does a great job. Hey, I'm just going to throw a bunch of lore at you, and we're not going to elaborate. So we got the War Master. We got Ulanor. We got all this other stuff that he's going to talk about, the Age of Strife. And again, this is the second page of the entire novel, and he's saying all of these really important references. How he works for the War Master. For over a year now, they've been campaigning. And the War Master is Horus. Horus Heresy himself.
Yeah, Mr. Horus Heresy. But yeah, to back what you're saying about, like, the lore is so deep that I don't know how it would be for an uninitiated to, like, open this book and have zero backstory at all, because I don't have that experience. I already knew a lot about it, but I would hope that an Oxford educated author would be able to do that, and like I would feel that as a reader, you just kind of, like, there's plenty of books you read where, like, you get a lot thrown at you, and you just kind of roll with it and not where. And I'm bad at that. A lot of times I'll be like, they'll introduce a character or a setting, and they purposely don't want you to know. They'll let you know later, but I get all like, and like maybe Google it almost. Like, where is, you know what I mean? So you don't got to do that. You can just read it, and just words you don't know, like places or people, like, it's okay. He knows what he's doing. He'll tell you later about them, or you might not hear about it at all, but it's not important to this direct story. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, you don't have to know what Olenor is. You know, if you want to, you can find out about it, and it does flesh out. But later books will flesh out Olenor, but you don't need to know right now what Olenor is. So, they don't got to worry about it. But it can be kind of daunting, I imagine.
Yeah, I was immediately thrown into. So wait, hold on. He already killed the Emperor. I'm so confused. Yeah. He's already, like, talking about campaigns. No, just roll with it. Dan knows. Dan the man knows what he's doing. You're not Oxford educated. I'm not Oxford educated.
I don't know, maybe someone is out there. I'm not.
But so he does a great job. Like I said, there's not a single moment without momentum propelling you through this dark universe where there's only war. You get told about the Great Crusade. You're on the 203rd year of this galaxy-expanding campaign. You're meeting men like Malagars. You're meeting men like Torgodon. Throwing so many names and titles, and I had a friend reading this book because he saw me reading it, and he's like, I couldn't do the audiobook because there were so many names. I had to get the physical copy.
Yeah, that's true. I've listened to this audio after reading it. I would imagine that you would get very confused. Because all the names are flying at you. You're not seeing them. You're just hearing them, and you're like, "Was that important? Who's that? Who's that? Who's that?" And then it's like, man, yeah, it'd probably be tough. I'm more of a, I'd rather read. I like audiobooks. I get it. But I can never retain, to be honest, man. A lot of it's like, sometimes I'll listen to audiobooks, and then I'll be like, 10 minutes later, I'd be like, what the hell was I just listening to?
Yeah,
because your mind wanders.
Your
somewhere
microwave
else.
went off, and you went to go grab your ramen, and
Yeah,
then you're like,
yeah,
wait,
yeah.
hold
And
on,
you're like,
someone
what?
just died.
Yeah,
I think.
yeah. What's happening?
So Dan sets the tempo right from the get go. He says 1, 2, 3, go, and you are thrown towards all these characters. But honestly, after the first 2 pages, he's like, hey, this is the tempo, but now here's the story, and he goes quickly into how he is following a campaign that goes to enlighten mankind. He goes to around the world, finding the lost men and women of the Empire and bringing them into the Emperor's light. Big E.
Yeah. Big E.
And so we go into our first actual lore point, very important to this novel. We get the introduction of Haster Sejanus, Emperor's big boy, big brother. That's his guy, man. That's his coworker. That's his best friend. His number one companion is Sejanus, and again, one of the guys you'll kind of hear throughout. Always brings donuts to work even if he's early, even if he's late, he's always gonna have donuts. He's always gonna spot you in the squat rack. He's always gonna be there to pick you up from the airport. He's just a good dude. And so they send Sejanus to one of the many planets that they found. And they're like, hey, you're going to go and you're going to be the intermediate. You're going to introduce them to the Big E. You're going to introduce them to Horus. Everyone loves you. They're going to love you. No one's never not loved you. So nothing could go wrong.
Yeah, so like Janet, yeah, he's like the smooth operator, you know. And this whole thing is, the concept behind it is Big E wants to unify the entire galaxy. So just a real quick like history lesson in this world. We used to span the galaxy, all the humans, all over the place. And then a bunch of stuff happened and we all disconnected and we like lost technology. So now the Big E has unified the Earth, and now he's like, all right, we're gonna roll out in the thing called the Great Crusade. He rolls out with his generals and they fly across the universe, and when they find planets with people, they say, hey, what's up? We're back. Like, hey, we're your cousins. We're going to call it, you know what I mean? We're humanity. And join us, you know? And that's what we're doing here. So they find a planet that is human in nature, you know what I mean? Like, there's little variations here and there, but they deem that these people are human. They're cousins of us, so they send Sejanus down to kind of just, like, you know, bring him in the fold. Say, hey, come on, here we are, you know?
And, yeah, we love Sejanus. You're going to love Sejanus. We're going to send Sejanus. And so they send him. And after about 3 paragraphs of introduction to the character, how amazing he is, he's dead. He died. They killed him.
Yeah. Sejanus doesn't make it very far.
No, he doesn't.
In the Horus Heresy.
He did not heresy very much.
Yeah, he didn't heresy very well.
No, so they send an intermediary, and they kill him. And so we are introduced to our first conflict and how it's handled. We're introduced again to Horus and how there's grief. He's sad. He loved Sejanus. And you're like, hold on, Horus, the Horus Heresy himself is sad. He cared. He loved this man. This was a son to him. And so again, my first introduction was like, okay, I get it. We're setting the scene. This is a man of integrity. If you have ever had a boss who really didn't give a shit about you, well, this ain't that guy. Horus loves his boys. Horus is about the boys, and he takes care of his men to the point where he knows every single one that is lost. So that sets a really interesting scene, because you're like, all right, this is the man we're going to follow, who's going to propel the entire Imperium of Man towards a never-ending conflict. But here he is being vulnerable, being caring, being nice. So what does that mean? What does that mean we're headed? So as we move forward, we find out, okay, so they killed my boy. We're going to war. We're going to take them out. Like, we're going to do what we do best, which is Space Marines 2, Electric Boogaloo. We're going to take care of business.
Well, they do try one thing. They send a second envoy with another guy, one of his, like, trusted advisors. And it's kind of a real quick blip in it. Like, that doesn't even make it. That gets shot down. You know what I mean? They're like, you know, so obviously they don't want to hear it. They don't want our message. They don't want our message of peace and unity and fiefdom, pretty much, is really what it is. But they don't want it. So then now it's on, because that's how it works. It's like you join or you die. You know,
Yep.
It's like the the flag that everyone hates nowadays, the yellow flag. Join or die. That's what it is. That's it. You know what I mean? You got two options. So they don't want to hear it. So then then it rolls into like a couple scenes of like, that like drugstore reading, like a good like cutting people up and fighting. You know what I mean?
And again, like there's a lot of things that appeal to people, and a lot of things that don't appeal to people with science fiction, and with these type of novels is violence. Violence, in my opinion, doesn't really sell me on a book. It's really easy to just write out a fight scene. But how do you how do you create gravity? How do you create meaning with these conflicts? We're 10 pages in and we're realizing, oh, this is like passionate warriors trying to spread the enlightenment of a big god emperor. You're hooked. But then Dan also manages to sprinkle little lore nuggets. He talks about the Mechanicum, this really weird little brotherhood of just gearheads who want to replace your heart with a V8 engine. You get Vox chatter. They don't even tell you what Vox chatter is, but you realize that that's kind of their radio, kind of through ghosts.
Yeah, you can kind of discern. You know what I mean? Like they definitely have a whole their own dictionary in a sense of words that you'll see and you'll read, and to uninitiated you wouldn't know. But I feel he does a good job where it's like, what the hell is a word like Vox? Doesn't make any sense. But if you read the rest of the sentence, you're like, okay, well, that's like, that's their radio. I don't know what that means. I have no idea how that works.
If you're an Oxford-educated man, you'll know Vox is Latin for voice.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, so if you got some brains in your head, you might know.
Yeah, you can put two and two together. Or if you're like me, you're like, oh, it's chattering in his ears, snapping on and off. I'm like, oh, that's a radio.
Yeah, that's how I saw it. It was like, the radio.
But yeah, then you get little references of Mark IV power armor, Imperial Astartes. He's catching you all up on who's who. You get the word Astartes, capital A, and you realize
what's that mean in Latin?
They say, "Oh, Astartes." I probably know some. I can't read Latin. I did one Google on Vox.
That's a good.
But
look that up, right?
Yeah, they talk about how these are the baddest bads that have ever batted. They are the might of the Big E himself, and they just got told that their big brother just got killed, and Horus is mad.
I just did a quick look. Okay, so Merriam-Webster says Astartes is the Phoenician goddess of fertility. So that doesn't really make any sense. But then a Reddit, which, is Reddit, says Adeptus Astartes means master of the stars. I don't know. That seems too, like
a little
perfect.
too on the nose.
Yeah,
a little too on the nose.
I don't know. But all I know is in my vocabulary, Astartes are the Space Marines. It's like a fancy name for the Space Marines.
They're the chapter of Space Marines. They are who is bringing the hurt across the galaxy. And then we're introduced to the Mordaval, who are the very tight-knit advisors and counsel for Horus himself. Again, these are very over-the-top names. You get names like Mordaval. You get names like Astartes, Lupercal. You get all these crazy Chthoniya, these terms that are like so high fantasy, so over-the-top, but then at the same time are grounded in science fiction. But they are referencing and giving you this aura of, hey, you're dealing with something that is so deep in references, so deep in lore, so deep and beyond. It's not even worth doing the Google. It's not even worth it. Just roll with it. Just roll with it, because Dan will hold your hand as you walk through this dark garden. And again, we're in chapter 1. And so he tells you, hey, we're going in. We're red. We're angry. You get introduced to more people like Neurovipus. You get introduced to people like Zacchaeus, like all these names that aren't entirely important, but at the same time that are important will be referenced again. So just keep
that's the best way to look
forward.
at it. So just keep going, and the names that you see multiple times are obviously important, but it's like a special forces unit. You know what I mean? So there's squads of 10, 20. So like they got to give them names. You know, they can't be like, hey, this guy. So a lot of the names you'll see once, you know what I mean, and then that's it, or all the time. But and of course the names are not like Joe and Steve and Bob.
I know,
it's always like
Zacchaeus
and Zayach
and Catanius.
Yeah. So.
But yeah, then they set the scene. Hey, these are the baddest of the bads. First Captain Garviel Loken, who's our Captain America Boy Scout. He just got the blessing. You're going in first. Go make it happen. And that's quite literally the first chapter.
Yeah. I like to get the physical attribute, because help me in my head. I like to paint a picture how I look. So in that chapter, it tells you that Garvio Loken, so he's massive, as they all are, right? But he has pale skin, short silver hair, and green eyes. So that just paints me a picture, right? Which you'll see later on is kind of different from a lot of his other guys, because another quick jump into the backstory, all these guys are genetically modified superhumans, like think Captain America, right? But beyond that, most of them are from a certain planet. You mentioned Chthonian.
Mm-hmm.
So they all kind of like, it's like an army that is all, you know, they're all from the same area, so they all have like similar attributes. But Loken kind of looks a little different from the rest of them. Like as we meet more guys, you'll see how other Chthonians look. They call them, which I found weird. I thought because sometimes the guys, the Astartes, they'll be from Terra, which is Earth, but he is not. He says he's a Chthonian, but it's kind of weird. He looks a little different. So
Yeah, and again, one Google away, Chthоnia is Greek for the underground.
yeah.
So these guys, they live in the dark.
But okay, so the chapter does mention who are they fighting though?
So who are they fighting? So chapter 1, these guys are fighting the Emperor.
Yeah, well,
Literally.
so I have a quote. So they were big men, tall, thick through the chest. Armor was a polished magenta trimmed with silver, and they're at the peak of fitness. All right, so you got this world with their biggest, baddest guys, right? And they're in this cool red, trimmed silver armor, looking super badass. But then it says not one of them, not even the tallest, came up to the chin of one of the Lunar Wolves, which is their army, we'll call it. You know what I mean? So and it says it said it was like fighting children. You know, that's what they're saying. So the idea is like these guys, our guys, the Legiones Astartes, they're always like just above everyone. There's no one. So you know, they find this planet, and then their people are the biggest, tallest, thickest men that they have, and they're not even. They're like, you know, they're like children. They're like their heads touch these guys' chin. You know what I mean? It's like ridiculous. You know what I mean? So that's the kind of perspective we're looking at. Like they're never on the back foot. They're always like they're the biggest, baddest, highly equipped, highly trained, and you know, time and time again, like they're always like, you know, like not saying they don't have challenges, but they're always like, you know, better than everyone. You know what I mean? So
there's typical action hero Arnold Schwarzenegger, but they're 8 feet tall and they don't have feelings except for when it's convenient for the writing.
I'll say that to the end, but yeah, I find that kind of weird, but yeah, I'll say that to the end. We'll talk about that in pros and cons. So, okay, so we jump into chapter 2. So now Dan likes to jump back and forth a little bit, kind of like Quentin Tarantino style. Not as deep, but now instead of being back, you know, instead of moving forward that fight scene, we are back on the ship. There's many ships in space. It's what do you call it? A expedition fleet, they call it, right? So the 62nd or whatever it is. So it's, you know, it's just fleets of ships, right? And we're back on one of them, and Loken, our guy, is being interviewed by a lady. This is a human lady named Mercedes Olinton. Mercedes Olinton. Okay, so for your physical attributes, like she has skin like coal, bald head, not shaved, just naturally bald, and her head is polished and extended to form a broad egg shape. So I think of like those museum pictures of like ancient Egyptians, how they used to like, you know, so. But there's stuff in there.
No, yeah. Oh, it's functional.
Yeah, it's functional with their job.
She got that expanded hard drive.
But so this is the first time you meet a person of the Remembrancer order. So quick, we'll get more into them. But quick, they're people. They're not super soldiers. These are regular people, artists, writers, poets, musicians, who have been inserted into these fleets to kind of like preserve the history. You know, interview people, take photo, all this stuff. So when this is all done, you know, someone 15 million years in the future or whatever can like go to a museum and there's stuff. It's not just, you know, battle reports. There's like stuff that they, you know, this is the grandest thing that's ever happened in the history of man. So they're like, all right, someone back home on Terra thought it'd be a good idea to send out a bunch of artists and writers and all to like, you know, record all this. So we have some kind of posterity.
And it's not.
Yeah, it's not very liked. Yeah. Right? Yeah. I mean, it depends. So you get more in that. Some people like them more than others, but in general, yeah. So it's like Yeah, I mean, it's like, I'm sure like, it'd be like an army unit having like a reporter with them.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, they might not like that because it's like a burden. You know what I mean? Like they got to carry this person around. Now, as of yet, they haven't gone to any fighting.
Yeah. But
they're hanging on a ship. So like, you're one of these genetically monster people, and you go down there and you slaughter 100 people, and you're all sweaty and tired, and you come back and you're like, oh yeah, okay, I'm gonna relax or whatever, and like, hey, can I talk to you? You know what I mean? It's like annoying. You know what I mean? I'm sure it's probably annoying as hell.
And they're not like war correspondents. They are the best like artists. Like they're like, they're not even people who are
handpicked from like, if you're a painter, you would have to put in like an application, and the whole earth has billions of people on it at this point, and out of all those millions of painters, they'll pick 2. You know what I mean? So like you got to be the best. You know what I mean? So I think she's I forget. I think she's a writer.
She's a writer.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but she has like she got the extended hard drive, so she remembers everything.
Yeah,
and she can quote like basically verbatim for the rest of her life.
Yeah. Okay. So she's talking to. She's trying to get some info out of Loken. Like, hey, what happened down there? And Loken recalls a fight that he had down on Terra. It's called Terra. It's like they call it Earth. About the Invisibles, which are like the Emperor, lowercase e Emperor's like elite units, and obviously they're invisible. You know what I mean? And I got a long quote here. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it's a really cool, but lowbrow, like you were saying, like violent style. So it's pretty much Loken talks about how he was able to figure out that I can find the invisible by like doing like Predator. He's not invisible if he moves. Mm-hmm. And then there's a scene where he like cuts the thing in half. This is the first time I'll mention it. A chainsword. So,
the moneymaker.
So a chain sword is just like it sounds. It's like if you know Gears of War, they have the chain bayonet. I think they stole that. I'm not gonna, I don't know.
I'm sure Games Workshop got
it probably
good money for that one.
Maybe, but yeah. So it think of a sword, but instead of a sharp blade, it's a serrated chainsaw, and they have a little activator, and it turns on. So this paragraph talks about how he found one, and he was able to swing around at the glistening in the air, and pretty much the chain sword like cut this guy into pieces. You know what I mean? And it's cool. I quoted it because I liked it, but it's kind of long, so I'm not going to like read the whole thing. But it goes into like what you're saying, like that doesn't make the book, but I think it makes it fun. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like now, some people love that stuff. Before these books in the 90s and all, they would write books that were just like they called it bolter porn. It was just literally like fights and fights and fights and fights. You know what I mean? Like, but I agree with you. I think that's peppered in there. It adds some, visceral excitement to the book, but it has to be just like an additive. It can't be the main story. So these Invisibles end up like, taking out a couple of the guys, which is very, very hard to do. So it's like, hats off to them. But then Loken figures out, here's how we do it. Figures out, hey, if you look, you'll see them sheening when they're moving, and then they're not as bad. So, all right. So they get through the fences. There's a cool little scene where there's like which I find kind of funny. There's that scene with the mounted turret that's like blasting through, and I was like, and I think it's written to like show you how cool Loken is. You know what I mean? But it also kind of like takes away from like, all right. So these guys are the super soldier. Elite, SEAL Team 6x10. You know what I mean?
At war for 200 years.
Yeah. Centuries of war, and I forget how many, but a couple got mowed down by a turret that's in the corner,
in a wall. It's like a fake. It's like a faux wall.
Yeah.
And they keep walking into this hallway, and then they're like, "Hey, there's an invisible man here. We need to find him." Yeah. And they keep walking in to find the invisible man.
Yeah.
And Logan's like, there's a gun in the wall.
Yeah, like, hey. So, I mean, I'm not a writer, and I'm not knocking Dan. I get what he's doing. He's, like, trying to show you Loken is the commander of the 10th Company. So they got to show that he knows how to do things better than Nero Vipus, who was, like, a lieutenant or sergeant. He's a sergeant, you know what I mean? So, yeah, he walked up, and there's, like, already 3 guys dead. And he's like, what are you doing? He's like, and then, he doesn't even know right off. He's, like, he kind of looks around, and he hears, like, the
ticking
traps.
of the,
yeah, whatever. But I was like, that kind of, like, lessens all... But then... I don't know how you write it, because if they're like, I could imagine like 200 years of war, they've probably seen everything, but they've never seen a turret.
Yeah.
They've never seen a turret behind a wall.
They're like, hold on, man.
It's got to be invisible man.
Because they were like, there's clearly invisible people here. They told us they're here.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a thumbs down part, but it's a little iffy. But I don't know what else to write. You know what I mean? Like, you got to beef Logan up. You got to get him up. But and then as badass as these guys are, plenty die. You know what I mean? Like, you know, and it's always a weird dichotomy I think in my head because, like, in the lore, in these books and in chapter books and all this stuff for the game, like these guys are like the the baddest of bad. But I mean, they gotta die.
They still die.
They still have to die. So like sometimes when they die, the way they do is kind of like that. You know what I mean? It's like, wait, a turret, and you had 3 guys just walk in there. You know what I mean? Like, but also that's another like look into their psyche because they feel invincible.
Yep.
You know, so they're probably like, one guy runs in, gets blown to death, you know, and they're like, well, I'm better than Sicarus here. I'll run in, you know what I mean? I don't know, you know what I mean? But like, I thought that was kind of funny, you know, like a turret took out a bunch of them, you know, until he's like, hey, dummies, throw this grenade or something.
Yeah, he's literally like, hey, just like throw a flare.
Yeah, throw a flare. That's it.
And he like distracts the heat tracker, and then he just literally like runs in, throws a grenade, and it dies.
Yeah,
and I was like, again, you gotta hype up our boy.
Yeah, you gotta hype up the man. He's the guy. So you gotta do something without being too over the top, like, you know, him killing some big bad boss. But all right, so moving on from that. So he climbed this high tower. So what's happening is different teams are assaulting different areas, right? And there's been chatter. I'm not sure if they introduced a couple other characters, but they've, you know, so they're talking about, we're trying to get to this tower. That's where they think, through their reconnaissance and all, they think that this Little League is. So he climbed the tower, and then he gets up to the top, and it's very like iconic, like this just big like dais, and there's a throne, and there's like this old man sitting on it. You know what I mean?
Got again hyping up her boy. Just ran up there.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
It's the Empire State Building.
Yeah.
And he beat the guys with the jetpacks.
Yeah. Well, I mean, also got to think like, you know, the armor they wear. We call it power armor. It literally is like, if it's off, it's like Fallout.
Yeah.
It's
Good
what
example.
it is. So it helps you move. If it had no power, you would be frozen inside of it. You know what I mean? You would be stuck. But anyway, yeah. But still, he's, you know, he does leg day. He knows how to run. You know what I mean? But yeah, he got up top. So there's old man sitting there, and this is a cool part of the book. I think even in the beginning, it starts to get a little more cerebral, not just kill, you know, for the Emperor stuff. So this old man, he's just like, hey, like why couldn't you just leave us alone? You know what I mean? Like what's the big deal here? Like, why did you have to press your way of life on us? I think he says here, if our philosophies are so much at odds, you could have passed us by. Are we such a threat? You know, so, and then it kind of like puts Loken back a little bit. He's come up there, you know, ready to kick ass, and it kind of puts him back a little bit. So, this Emperor's little E Emperor calls, you know, Loken, calls him an invader, calls him immoral. You know what I mean? And he doesn't know how to respond to that because he's like having this like, you know, crisis in his head. He's like, well, shit, yeah, like we are kind of invaders. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, we totally did. You know, just come here and give you an ultimatum. You know what I mean? It was like, so that's what it's saying. Like, so Janus is a smooth operator, was a smooth operator and all, but the end goal is A or B. It's not like some kind of like navigation where it's like we can, you know, coexist. It's like, no, like you will join the Imperium, which means you're going to start paying taxes and blah, blah, blah. If you got religion, not no more. You know what I mean? All that stuff. So it's very A or B. You know what I mean? So he's having like a little bit of like a crisis there. And before we can respond and all, the jetpack guys come flying in. So it's power armor guys with jet propulsion on their backs. They're like the shock troop, assault troops. So they come flying in, led by Callus Ecodon. Another crazy, weird name. You know what I mean?
Super important. Don't worry.
Yeah.
He totally doesn't go away in like 3 chapters.
So he lands and he's like, "Oh, right, let's just kill this guy." And Loken's like, "No. Like this is their boss. He wants to surrender to the War Master." And I think we should honor that, you know? And he's like, you know, God, Callus doesn't care. He's like, what are you talking about,
I've
man?
never
Like,
killed an emperor before. Come on, man. I want to do it.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, he's not... Loken has a little more, like honor in a sense. Like, hey, like, all right, we've beaten this foe. Let their leader surrender to our leader, which is kind of like a time-old tradition in many kind of conflicts. You know what I mean? You go sign a surrender treaty, you know, you don't just get killed by the foot soldier guy, you know what I mean? But, you know, so they're going back and forth. But as they're happening, he realizes this is all a trap. All right? He calls in and says, hey, the War Master's going to come in. Cool. Before that all happens, though, there's like this old man pushes a button of some sort or some kind of thing, and like an energy pulse, like boom, like blast out and sends all these guys flying to the edge. In my head, it's like this. It's like a ring with drop off.
Duel of Fates.
Emperor, it's like that. Yeah.
Phantom Menace, Final Battle, Darth Maul.
Yeah, so so all the guys go flying across, a bunch of them fall off to their deaths, all this stuff. Very dramatically, Loken's like hanging on the edge.
He's got the one glove.
His fingers are like into the concrete. You know what I mean? And he's about to fall over, and who reaches down, Big Daddy style, and like grabs him by the scruff of his neck and saves him. It's the War Master. So the War Master has arrived and saved Loken. Right? He dispatches the false emperor, the little E, right, and saves Loken. So he comes down, and that it shows like in an instant shows how how cool Loken was. But look at this guy. This guy comes down and really saves the day. You know what I mean? I think what the real dude was hiding behind.
He was on the throne.
He wasn't the guy you were talking to,
no,
right?
He was on the throne, invisible. He was actually invisible.
Yeah. So Horus understands this. He teleports down. They can teleport. That's another thing we'll talk about later. They can teleport.
Kind of.
Yeah. It's a weird way, but yeah. So he comes down, kills the air quote bad guys, and then saves Loken. And then this whole chapter ends. It kind of jumps back to his tale finishing with Mercedes, and I think she calls him Horus, and he like gets pissed. He's like, "Oh, it's the War Master.
It's the War. It's War Master.
You're remembered, sir. Remember that.
It's War Master.
Yeah. So they're very particular about that. You know what I mean? Like you don't get to call him Horus. Only I get to call him Horus. You're just a remembered. You're just a person. You know what I mean? Like it's War Master to you. It's not anything else. And that's where the chapter ends, and then we move into chapter 3.
And we get introduced in chapter 3 to one of my favorite characters, Cinnamon. Carol Cinnamon. But we open up with, I believe, classic Garviel. He's hitting that bench press. He's training. And then he gets... this is when they propose to him to be in the Marvel, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so, again, there's so much we're going to be gleaning through in this, guys. Like, there's so many names, lore. You got to read the book. We get introduced to a bunch of other characters, like Euphrates Keeler, Ignace Carcassy. Important to the story, 100%.
Yeah.
We cannot walk you through everybody, so we're gonna keep you moving forward. So we get introduced to some more remembrancers. Most importantly, the one that I care about the most is Cinderman, who is the term is iterator.
Yeah.
Now imagine.
And what's iterator?
Iterator. Yeah. Now what's an iterator? I thought it was like a professor. It is more of a propaganda pusher.
Yeah, that's what it is.
They're trained in the arts of crowd manipulation. They are the ones putting all the "we want you," Big E wants you. The Emperor is always watching, and anything else is wrong.
Yeah, so he's like the head one. He's the best one. Their main job, like, so they can project their voice. They're good. They're like Tony Robbins style speakers. And yeah, their job is to they would go down to a world that has been called, like this world, and speak in front of crowds and tell everyone how great the Emperor is and how great everything's going to be good, everything's going to be awesome. And then also they would have like other ones in the crowd, kind of like buffing the voice in a sense, you know what I mean? And that's their job. Yeah, their job is to spread the imperial, we'll call it propaganda, you know what I mean? And he's described as he's tall, old, white hair, straight posture, and a commanding presence. So he's an old man, obviously. He could be over 100-some years old because they have all this stuff. It's sci-fi. But he's not like... I don't really see him as feeble. You know what I mean? He's old and frail because he's an old man, but he's like... His head straight posture. So I think, he's like commanding, yet he is an old... he's not physically imposing or anything, but he's definitely commanding presence.
I get like Count Dooku vibes.
He's
like kind of like this old guy, but he's still got some heart in him. But yeah, then we get a little tip of the hat. They mention Rogel Dorn, another Primarch, another important character. They just briefly mention him, how he didn't take part in the conflict, but he was nearby.
Yeah, he was like hanging out. I think his ships are somewhere. And with Cinderman, you have Cinderman is like been assigned to Loken in a sense. So the War Master, he's not just like strategic and war genius. He's also smart in many other. If Logan and his boys are genetically enhanced, he's like above that. We can describe that later how that works and all, but he's above that. So he's smart on many levels. Example of that is he insists that they give a funeral for the lowercase emperor, but no remembrance is allowed. So it's a good move. So it shows the people of the planet that they just crushed, hey, we care, but they don't know this. But we, as the Imperium, we're not going to record this shit. No remembrances are there, and that's where actually the Imperial Fists were the ones who are Rogo Dorn's boys. They were the ones who like presided over the funeral. You know what I mean, they did a funeral for the Emperor. So, he's thinking, oh, okay, we just conquered these people. We don't want to look like total, Mongol style, like just take everyone over. So we're gonna have like a nice funeral for your guy.
We killed.
Yeah, we killed. It's all over. It's okay now. But so he's smart on many levels. So one of the things is he signs scholars to get with his like top guys. Not everyone, because there's thousands of these genetically enhanced Astartes, but his top guys. So Loken has been assigned Kirill Cinderman. So when you're introduced to Kirill, I think he's given a speech, and Loken comes in to like kind of watch. And then they, after it's done, he kind of like talks to him about his confliction with what that lowercase emperor said, and also about how his buddy asked him to join the Mournival.
So yeah, Loken is again perfect Boy Scout. He's get offered a promotion. And what does he do? I don't think I'm worth it. I don't think I'm. So he goes to his boy, his sensei, his Mr. Miyagi.
Yeah, his Miyagi. That's good.
And but obviously his Mr. Miyagi also happens to be the number one propaganda pusher in the entire galaxy. But that's not important right now. And he's like, hey, I don't know how to feel about this. I'm not worthy. I'm not even like the most senior of the people. I wasn't even in line to be promoted to this position. And Cinnamon does a great job. He does a great job telling him. I don't think he's the one who name drops it, but they call him eventually a Naismith.
I think he does. I think Cinnamon says, so he says, you'll be a perfect fit to replace the Janus if, put two and two together. So Janus dies, and then you got in his spot in the Mournival. And he says Loken is a Naismith, and he's needed in the Mournival as the voice of reason. So since we're talking about the Mournival, we'll kind of go into detail. So there's 4 guys in the Mournival. They're all like top guys. But it doesn't have to be like, I think it's first captain obviously is in it, and, second captain. It doesn't have to be that order. It's 4 guys that the War Master has chosen to be like his confidants. They're outside of the structure of the standard military thing. They're above it, but not part of it. And they get to do cool stuff like, hang out with the War Master in his private chambers and all. But he uses them as as consul, you know what I mean? Like he wants to bounce ideas off them, and he probably doesn't make many decisions without consulting them. And I can only assume that he picks them because of their characteristics, and then that's why Loken's said Boy Scout. He's more like, shit, man, I'm not like qualified for this. But then Cinderman tells him like, no, you're perfect because you are always asking questions, and you need that. And the War Master knows he needs that. So you need to be you. You need to take that position because your voice of reason is going to help him in difficult decisions. It might avoid war. It might avoid death of your fellow Astartes, all that thing. So he tells him he should do it. And I think he decided to do it. I mean, he does do it.
I mean,
Spoiler, he does.
Spoiler.
He takes it.
Yeah,
he
gets the promotion. But yeah, no, I think, again, this is a good little like window into who Horus is at this time. Is he personally requested Loken. So it said like, I'm not sure, I don't think I'm worthy. I don't think the War Master's going to want me there. And they're like, no, the War Master requested you. I mean, the guy could have easily just surrounded himself with yes men. I mean, he does have a guy on his console that's called Little Horus. Not conceited. It's fine. But yeah, you learn that he wants that console. He wants good representation for his men and good leadership. And obviously, he could have picked like the biggest, strongest guy, but he didn't. He chose Loken, who is the most humble, who is the most down to earth, intelligent, of his men. And again, it's a good reflection on who you surround yourself with. It's a good reflection on who you are as a person. And it looks like Horus is a pretty good dude. And again, you introduced to Cinnamon saying and giving you this little window and like, hey, like you should look at it like this perspective. He's talking to a 8-foot super soldier saying, hey man, get it together.
Yeah.
And
he
again,
also mentions about when he talks about how he feels weird about the fight and all.
Yeah.
And he said here, I have it here. He says, the Imperium Cinnamon assures him that they are mighty because they are in the truth, not the other way around. So what he's saying is, don't worry, what we're doing needs to be done because we are right. We're not making it right because we're strong. It's because we're right is why we're strong. Yeah,
yeah. It's like this would be wrong if we weren't right.
Yeah, but we're right.
So it's a good thing we're right.
Obviously, you're right. You know
and
what I mean?
again, he just told Logan, "Hey, we like you because you question things, but like, don't question this. This is like for
but
sure.
You can't question that. That's like the one thing you can't question is the imperial truth and the whole part of what's going on here. Like we have to do it. We have to unite everyone. Everyone must come into our fold because it has to.
But yeah, moving on now. We're on chapter 4.
Yeah. Okay. So now this one is it's a quick chapter where they go back down to the surface of the planet they were just on. Logan travels to the surface, bringing Mercedes Overton along. And this is a ceremony to welcome Logan into the Mournival. All right, so he's led into a shallow pool. It's nighttime. The moon's reflected. They got lanterns set up. I always find this funny that these like gigantic gene-enhanced super soldiers. I picture like the hours before, and they're like setting up little
candles.
Lights.
It's like, he's got to walk in here.
Yeah, he's gonna walk right here. It's gonna be so good. You know what I mean? So he's led into this like small, pool, waiting pool, and there's candles, lanterns everywhere. So Torgadon's there. So we met Torgadon before. He's described as like dark hair, roguish looking. He's like the jokester of the group of this Mournival. You also now, first time, he's been talking about when you meet Abaddon. So first Captain Abaddon, he described as a brute, tall, a cresting top knot, mane of black hair. So that's what I think of when I think of the Chthonian look. It's like long hair, but just on the top of your head, and they put it up in this crazy like top knot. I think of like I forget the movie. It was some like 80s kung fu movie or something.
Oh
like
yeah,
the guy
like he's a Shaolin monk looking.
Yeah, and then you have the fourth member is Horus Oxymon. They call him Little Horus. And it's not like a pompous thing, is that, so we can talk about it now. So the way these guys are made is, first of all, they're all from the same planet that Horus came from, right? Which I don't know how, but they all kind of look similar. It's just a planet, but whatever. Anyway, so when they're young, this is for all these Astartes. They're young, they're tested through vigorous mental and physical tests, and then they're taken from their families. Like 8, 9 years old, stuff like that. The younger, but not babies, but like they can't be above like puberty. It's like too late then. You know what I mean? They take them from their families. They take them to some have like monasteries, some have training things. But anyway, they input like organs into them, but they give them the genes of their boss, which is called the Primarch. They're Primarch, so their head, their top guy. This is Horus. So all these guys below him have his genes like flowing through him. Hence why he calls them sons. He's technically kind of like,
their genetic father.
Yeah, so
technically. And
some of these guys look like him, like similar to his look. And little Horus, he's smaller because Horus is probably like 12 feet tall. This guy's more like 8 feet tall. But I think Horus is even shorter. He's like stout. But anyway, he looks like Horus, so they call him Little Horus. You know what I mean? So he's got the same features: bald head, royal face, stuff like that. So they call him Little Horus. He actually described as young and short, but robust, shaved head, resembles the War Master, as does Abaddon. Abaddon resembles a War Master as well. So that's them. That's 4. That's the Mournival. 3, and then plus the new Logan. All right, so the ceremony begins, and Logan don't like it. Logan's not down with this stuff. So Logan is very, like we said before, Boy Scout. He believes in what's called the Imperial Truth. The Imperial Truth, in quick terms, is no superstition, no religion. Everything's very science-based.
Science. I don't believe in the Lord.
Yeah.
I believe in science.
Yeah, and but also not even like believing in certain gods. Like he don't like this ritual style. You know what I mean? Like he don't like what the fuck these candles and shit. No. And then Torgadon, being the Joker, laughs at it. He said, "Hey, man," he calls him a starch ass, arse, because it's Britain. And they assure him, "Hey, man, like it's just to make it fun and special. So you remember it, you know what I mean? Like Abaddon set these candles up, man. Like, come on,
Like,
dude,
come on,
you know?
man! You got this 10-foot super soldier lighting candles and putting up confetti. Like,
yeah, but he shrugs it off. He's not a big fan of it, but he's like, okay, cool, I get it. We're just doing this because it's fun, and because it's a big moment. He's going to be elevated to like a really high part in his organization. So all right. So they're in there. The light of the moon shining down, and they all have like I think on their helmet they have like a different phase of the moon.
Yeah.
So 4 phases. You got full, half. What's it? Crescent.
waning, waxing.
Yeah, it's like that. You know what I mean? So they have that. And then they recite their oath. And it's a little long, but I'll recite it. So, a bond that can only death will break. Loken thought about Abaddon's words. Death was a single expectation of every Astartes. Violent death. It was not an if, it was a when. In the service of the Imperium, each of them would eventually sacrifice his life. They were phlegmatic about it. It would happen. It was that simple. One day, tomorrow, next year, it would happen. So, these guys are immortal, essentially. Like, if you were to take one and then just put him farming somewhere, he would just live forever, in a sense. Like I said, they mentioned, like, they've been fighting for centuries, you know what I mean? So, like, no one really knows how long they can live if they were left untouched, but their whole job is to fight. Yeah. So they're going to die. They're not going to die, like, in a rocking chair. They're going to be blown apart, you know what I mean? So, like, essentially, they're immortal. There's no way to tell because none of them have ever been, like, peacefully left alone to just do their own devices, you know what I mean? But so they end their oath by saying, "Kill for the living, kill for the dead." That's their saying. That's what that's like. It's like earlier they said Lupercal. They call the War Master Lupercal. They're called the Luna Wolves. It's kind of like their thing. He's the wolf. You know what I mean?
But they're not wolf people. That's a different guy.
No, that's a different one. There's like actually wolf people. But yeah, so all right. So they that ends the ceremony. They all like high five and they talk all night about battles won and greatness to come. And then I found this funny that the beginning of the chapter talks about him bringing Ollerton, who was a Remembrancer, but she wasn't allowed to come to this.
Yeah, she was invited to the boys' club.
Yeah, so she just hangs out in like a tent with a bunch of army dudes playing cards. And I was like, the only thing that they add to it is that they're playing the game Mournival. Mm-hmm. The army soldiers and Ollerton. But I've read this so many times and I'm like, it just seems like, why would this even add it? Because like, okay, so they play, and the thing that talks about the cards, like, I don't know. I maybe I'm dumb. I'm not Oxford educated, but I don't know. I just feel like it was like a waste. Like, why even talk about bringing Ollerton down if she wasn't involved whatsoever? I get to bring in the fact that the Mournival is a game that they play in this future world, but I don't know. I don't see what the significance it has in later on. But either way, yeah, he brings her down. She don't get to see the ceremony, and then she's stuck there all night. Because they're all hanging out in their little, candlelit freaking pool, lounging, hanging out. So, either way, so that chapter just kind of goes through how now Loken is now officially in the Mournival. So, as we see, the beginning, we show he's a badass, but 10th Company, obviously 10th, not really that high in the rankings, but, he's being rocketed into a whole other stratosphere of responsibility and like prestige in the Legion, as we would say, and that ends that chapter. So we go next chapter. We have Carcasse on Terra. So you want to talk about that one? Because
love my boy. All right, time out. I'm gonna go run to the bathroom.
Okay. All right, and we're back.
All right. So chapter 5. So we get a really proper introduction now to a man named Carcasse. Ignace Carcasse.
Ignace Carcasse.
Now his proper title is Ignace Carcasse, official remembrancer poet.
Yeah.
Some of them have pretty confusing names like iterator, documentarist, poet. Pretty cut and dry.
And he's described as tall and chubby, black hair, and he's a rich kid. So I pictured like trying to think of another character, but yeah, he's just like a doughy, spoiled kid.
Harry Potter's, was it cousin that he lives with?
I don't really know. I don't know Harry Potter.
The kid that like bullies him when he's living under the stairs. So yeah, we get introduced to Ignace, and we were just kind of talking. This chapter isn't super driven in terms of plot and lore, but it does create some perspective. So Ignace, thinking he's the almighty, alwitty, is watching this really hot, stuffy ceremony. It's the biggest ceremony you've ever seen. People are talking, and he wants to go and hit a bar. He's over it.
Yeah, he's like, it's all a bunch of these highfalutin guys from the expedition telling the local populace how we're gonna, here's the future plans for this city that we just smashed. You know what I mean? Like,
hey, this whole war that we kind of just did within 3 days, don't worry about it. We're gonna make you guys so built up to awesome. So Ignace, and this is kind of why I like him a bit. He's like, this is a load of baloney. This is just a lot of nonsense. And he's a poet that I believe he got famous because he wrote about just the grim, just really dark realism. Like, he was just didn't believe in the floofy nonsense. He really liked to write about how things were and captured it with his poetry. However, that was like 10 years ago, and he hasn't really written much since. But he still managed, because he's a rich boy, to get on the expedition. So he decides it's a good idea to go walking the streets of a conquered, occupied nation. He starts walking around. He finds a little watering hole, and he describes the architecture and like his ideas on the Imperium. Not super crazy, but then he goes to this bar and he sees a bunch of soldiers drinking, and he just does what every sane man would do, which is picks a bar fight.
Yeah.
He gets into a bar in an occupied, not nation, occupied world. They just took over.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I mean, like, it's hard to fathom. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. So he's in a bar inside of a city that is occupied, but yeah, the whole entire world has been like usurped in a sense.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and it's not like fun usurped. Like, they're still squabbling and infighting and stuff, and like they're pretty much, they won, but it's still like not like, no one's happy about it.
No one's happy.
You know
I
what
mean, like,
the lady scoffs at him. He tries to give him like imperial credits. You know what I mean? And she's like looking at him like, and she don't speak the language. You know what I mean? Like. So he goes like back and forth because I do like how they talk about his bondsman number 5 or something like that.
Yeah.
Like, so he has these books. He has these like, and I'm the same way. Like, I buy myself like a moleskin every year. You know what I mean? Like, to take notes at work and all. So like, I get it. And he's been having trouble writing. And then as he's drinking and he like takes the bottle and walks around, he's starting to find like the muse, and he starts writing in his bondsman, and he's feeling happy. I do find a good part. He goes into like a temple, and he's like,
that's right.
He's like blown away by it, because like, you gotta understand, like, where he's from on Earth, I don't know the exact timeline, but there hasn't been religion in millennia. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean, everyone's like, the imperial truth is that there is no hocus pocus, no man in the sky, nothing like that. It's all science and reason. You know what I mean? So when he goes into this temple, he like kind of shocked and realizes that this planet still has like religion, has superstition, it has that stuff, and he kind of like scoffs at it, because he's like, we have the imperial truth, all that
He's
stuff.
Like, what do these guys got? They got foofy nonsense. It's a fugazi, it's a fugazi. I got Big E.
Yeah,
I got the Big E.
And then he goes back to the bar, and that's where he like kind of like, now he's like, he's like pretty drunk now, and he starts mouthing off like how his poet mind's thinking. He's like, the impermanence of everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
nothing's permanent. And there's like some soldiers who were like, what the fuck do you say? He's like, well, we're not. The Imperium won't last, and they're not. They're not like, it's hard. Like, it's not like a dude in the army now who's like, yeah, I'm doing this 4 years, go to college. Like, no, these guys are like, this is their life.
They get sent to the darkest, worst places in the world because they believe, like...
Yeah, that's all they got. They have no choice. They're going to be in the army, so this is what they got. They're like, we are fighting for this, and this is what's happening. And then you got this, like, little fat
rich kid
poet over there saying, well, it's not going to last forever. And they're like, this guy's like, dude, I just saw, like, 10 of my buddies get blown up, you know what I mean?
They sent me with a flashlight to fight a giant meat-eating monster.
So, yeah, so it's funny because he's in an occupied area but he's on the Imperial side, and then there's other Imperials who are there, and he gets beat up by the Imperials.
Yeah, he gets
like
manages to go into an occupied nation and gets beat up by his own guys.
Yeah, so a small regiment of Imperial Guard, which is like the army. You know, the Space Marines are like the special operations guys, and these army guys are not enhanced at all.
They're
dudes.
you and me.
They're just regular dudes. You know what I mean? Like so, and he mounts all to him and he gets beat up, and that kind of like where the it ends with him getting like severely beaten in the street.
Yeah, he's talking
outside
about bones snapping.
Yeah,
and
so he gets his ass whooped
bleeding.
pretty bad. It doesn't say he dies or anything, but he gets like whooped up pretty bad. You know?
Yeah, that's that whole chapter is
yeah, it's pretty quick. I mean, it's got a lot. It also is the first. If you've never read any of this stuff, is the first time they mention a Titan because he uses a Titan as a point of reference as he walks around the area.
He walks in a city. He's walking a city, and his point of reference is a Titan. Is a war machine.
So Titan is like I mean, you can probably get it from the like think
Pacific Rim.
Yeah, Pacific Rim, or like if you're into anime, like Robotech and stuff like that. Like it's giant robot, but they're not anime looking.
No,
they look like cathedrals.
Yeah, don't worry. Yeah, and
you can Google it and look, maybe in this part in the YouTube thing we'll throw up a picture of a couple. But yeah, like they look like the old ones, like in the '90s and all. They look straight up like a robot with a church on its back. And the bigger they are, the crazier they look. There's the smaller ones look more like your standard anime style robots, like with just shoulder guards and arms and all. But the big ones like look like buildings. And they have guns everywhere. So so this thing is taller than the tallest building. He's using that as a reference to get around the city because everywhere he looks, he cannot get out of his view because it's giant. You know what I mean? It's got a giant head, and he says like I think he calls it menacing and all this stuff. But that's a cool little like thing to throw in there if you've never heard about this stuff. And Dan Adams does a good point because I mean I feel if someone says the word Titan, you get the idea. You know what I mean? Like if you're into sci-fi, you kind of understand what Titan means.
Big
you know what
thing.
I mean? Like. So that was kind of cool, but yeah, I mean, this is a really quick chapter. It just kind of gives like different insight. It gives insight into Ignace as a person, and it shows, which you'll see come to more fruition later, how he always speaks his mind. He doesn't back down, even if it's wrong, or even if it's going to get him in trouble. You know what I mean?
Can't. He
can't help it. You know what I mean?
He's very much the artist. He believes in the purity of art, which is you got it. And this is why he's famous. He says it how it is.
Yeah.
Or how about how he sees it.
And then sometimes that gets you in trouble. You know what I mean? But
you can't go mouthing off to a bunch of drunk soldiers.
But okay, so that one. The next chapter goes. Now we are on the stratagem, which is like a briefing room on steroids. Aboard the Vengeful Spirit. So the Vengeful Spirit is
big name.
Big name. It's the name of the ship. It's a capital ship of Horus for his expedition. So it's the biggest of the biggest ships they have, and these ships are like bigger than cities.
I mean, he made the Vengeful Spirit, so like it's not prefaced very well in this book. You see it in other books because it's like they saw God. It's the size of New York.
Yeah,
the state.
Yeah. So he said like some of them are like city size, other like state size. So like just think like the biggest thing you can possibly see. Like sometimes these ships are referenced like where people on the planet can like see them like floating in orbit. Like so like just that it's that big. So excuse me, we're on the stratagem said briefing room, and they're pretty much talking about what to do next. And then you get a whole cast of characters here, some cooler than others, and I'll go through some of them. There's some cool. So you have Lord Commander Hector Varvarus. So this is like the general of generals. He runs the army.
He's Patton.
Yeah, he's like Patton. You know what I mean? So he runs the entire army. So he's there. So he's representing the army. Then you have Boss Communus, Master of the Fleet. So this guy is in charge of all the ships. He's like, and it's weird because as you read some of these books, you see some of these ships are human operated, and then other ships that are Space Marine are actually like captained by a Space Marine, but some aren't. Some are, there's really I haven't really read anything that says like why, but some ships are captained by humans, some ships are captained by actual Space Marines. But there's a good description of this guy because he is crazy. Okay, so Boss Communus, Master of the Fleet, waited, drumming steel fingers on the edge of the outside plinth. He was a squat bear of a man, his ancient, flaccid body encased in a superb silver and steel exoskeleton, further draped in robes of deep, rich Celtic blue. Neatly machined ocular lenses whirred and exchanged in the augmented frame that supplemented his long, dead eyes. So I picture like a steel like egg with robot arms, and inside there somewhere is a body of sorts. but I can't, like, I don't think his body is even shown. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, he's got robot eyes, steel fingers, so like robot hands, and he's wearing robes, which whatever. But like, yeah, so it's just crazy how he's like, so that's a little like insight into like the technology is around. So this guy must have been so good at commanding ships throughout his career that they're like, you can't know.
We gotta keep you around,
You can't
man.
die.
We gotta keep you around.
Yeah, you gotta be around forever. You know what I mean? We also meet Ing Mei Sang, Mistress of Astropath. So,
Ooh, what's an astropath?
okay, an Astropath. So, it's trying to like break it down easy. Okay, so the ships propel themselves through normal like jet propulsion. It's kind of different, but whatever. But when they want to go far distances, think like, what's that called in Star Wars? Light travel?
Light speed.
Light speed. Or like Star Trek.
Star Trek.
They like
warp drive.
So yeah, okay. So I don't know who's they probably stole it.
Warp. Ooh.
Okay, so so the travel great distances, they activate a warp drive, but it's not like Star Trek where they just go fast. The warp drive rips open a hole in reality, and then they go through that hole, and then they're essentially in another realm, which you could call hell, kinda. It's
It's the warp.
it's the warp, but it's full of crazy shit. And anyway, then they travel through the warp, which is a faster way, and they rip a hole open in the warp and come back out. All right. How do you know where you're going? So you have the astropaths. Oh, I'm sorry, that's a navigator. Astropaths, sorry. Astropaths send signals. That's what that is, through the warp. I'm sorry, I'm thinking navigator. So, they don't have like email, right? They don't have like like a quick fax, something like that to get messages. So if you are Horus on your ship and you want to talk to someone way across the galaxy, you have to send a message through this astropath. So this lady's the boss of them all, and the ship's got tons of them. They're psychically gifted people whose job is to then. So you say, hey, I want you to tell my brother Rogodorn that he's a dork. All right. So, all right, sure, boss. She will then send a psychic message through the warp, and then it'll be picked up by an astropath on the other end. But it's not like, she's like, oh, hey, you're a dork. No, it's like a dream.
It's like a picture of a bird.
Yeah.
And they're like, hey, I think this is a stork. And it's saying, tell Rogodorn, you're a stork.
So that's how they communicate through great distances. They communicate through the warp, through dreams. So it's like, I don't even know how it works. It's very inaccurate.
But it's not magic.
No, it's not magic.
Because magic's not allowed.
It's science.
So it's totally scientific.
But sorry, yeah. So the navigators are the people who then, when they go into the warp, they through their mind like see the map of where they're at, and it's never accurate. And it's a great plot point because you can make it whatever you want it to be. So as the stories go on, sometimes it's easier. Sometimes you'll hear things like sometimes guys go into warp and they come out 1,000 years later.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Or some guys come to work and they come out yesterday. You know what I mean? like so it's just crazy, but it's a good little plot armor because like the writers can really use it to like is it kind of cheesy? Yeah, maybe, because you'll see in later books how like, well, this guy should have showed up, but the warp and all.
Is really rough.
Sorry for confusion, but yeah, the navigators are the one to do that. But astropaths send messages. Put it that way.
But yeah, Ing Mei Sing, baddie. She's awesome. So again, no one really likes people who work with the warp. No one likes them, but it's 100%. And again, this entire high science fiction, it's like, we tolerate it, but it's not okay. But like, how else are we supposed to travel billions of miles in a reasonable amount of time? How else do you control the Imperium of Man? Well, we got to make some compromises. But it's not a compromise because the compromise isn't in the Imperium of Man. But they're going to compromise.
Yeah, so it's pretty much like psychics are outlawed, except unless they're sanctioned psychers.
Unless it's like good for us.
That's good for us.
Unless it's good for us.
So, and similar to the Astartes, a person with psychic ability would be taken from their homes when they're very young, and then that ability would be enhanced. And actually, the astropaths and the navigators usually are all like they're called houses. It's usually a family. So like if I were to be an astropath, it's highly likely that my children would be. So usually these are very important and rich and powerful people in the world of 40K because their houses of astropaths are like important. So like they'll continue this lineage, and there'll be astropaths all over, and they have like they got seats on councils, and they're important. They're movers and shakers. You know what I mean? And the last person you meet is Regulus, who is a Mechanicum adept.
Mechanicum.
And we kind of spoke about the Mechanicum a little bit. It's like the tech nerds, but on a whole nother level, because they're so tech nerdy that they don't want to be people anymore. So most of them are this hybrid. I always love reading descriptions about the adepts, because some are like more human, and they're like, oh yeah, this lady, she's got a robot head. But everything else, other ones are like, oh, he's got like nothing left, and he's like walks on spider legs, and he's got arms come out his back. So, but yeah, so they're like, this is also very contradictory, but they see technology as a religion, which is weird.
But it's not a religion.
But it's not.
It's not a religion. It's the study of machines and science.
Yeah. But they use incense to start them. And they pray to them. So
no, they reflect.
We won't get into that. There's a whole book about mechanics. We can get into that later. But yeah, so pretty much every area is represented. You got the army, the navy, the astropath people, and then you have the Mechanicum adept, who's like, he's in charge of all the machines. He's there. Okay, so Horus is obviously there because he's in charge of everything, and then in the shadows is the Mortal. So like I said, they're not official. They're there, but they're not up front. They're kind of in the back. Everyone, it's not that hidden. Everyone knows who they are and what they are, but they're not like officially at the table making decisions. They've already probably spoke to Horus, and we all come to the same decision. You know what I mean? So they're discussing the plans for this Terra, which is where they're at now, and they're discussing the next movements of the Crusade and what's happening next. You know what I mean? So some unlucky guy is going to get stuck here. So that's how it always happens. You conquer a system, and then the hero of the system, not an Astartes, but a regular guy, usually gets like, "Hey, good job, hats off to you. You're a governor now." And now they're stuck here, and because who knows when they'll come back? You know what I mean? Like we're talking, galaxies. You know what I mean? So. All right, so talk about what to do next, and the big thing here is how to deal. There's one little pocket of rebels still. All right, so they're like, oh, okay, so we're compliant or no? And we're like, well, kinda, not really, So Varvarus speaks up and says, yeah, well, there's this mountain range, and we've been getting pounded. You know what I mean? Like they're, it's a stronghold, and they're dug in deep, and we're just getting rocked, right? So I think Loken steps up and kind of says, hey, we'll take care of it. You know what I mean? Like let the Astartes take care of it. And Hector Varvarus is like, oh, he's like, yeah, absolutely, that's awesome. But it's the strategy of it, because the Astartes are to regular people, they would be seen as sometimes like a overkill. They're very violent. So with the War Master and his infinite wisdom, if you read this, he didn't send his dogs to war. He let one of his guys come out. You know what I mean?
And he didn't even say we should do it. He said, hey, this is an idea.
Yeah.
This is because I think the War Master was like, hey, I don't know, man, this is a tough cookie. What do we do? Loken, and then he's put on the spot, and then they did give him a little heads up, like, hey, when it's your time, you gotta say something.
And this is the first time you see how he uses the Mortal. There's other parts in this book where he says this is very similar. He uses it as his mouthpiece when he can't be seen to call his guys to war, or he can't be seen, I think later on, to rebuke someone. You know what I mean? It's like he don't want to look bad or warlike. But hey, man, these guys, that's all they want to do. You know what I mean? I can't always contain them. So, but either way, the army's thankful because they've been getting slaughtered. You know what I mean? So they're they decide that, and then after that, that's gavel down. We decided, cool. Here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna send in Loken and his boys, to take care of this small rebel. It's just people. It's humans. You know what I mean? It's just more humans. Nothing tough. So afterwards, the War Master, his main man, Malgahurst, who has mentioned here off and on.
Because he was shot down. He was the one he was the second envoy.
So he was second envoy, he shot down. This is his first time return. He's limping, he's all messed up. He's the War Master's equerry. You know what I mean? He's his boy, you know what I mean? They call him the Twisted, which is a kind of a jab at his like feature because he's jacked up, but also because he's like a little like political snake. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like he knows what what wins out. Anyway, War Master Malgahurst and the Mournival retire to Inner Sanctum, and they're all hanging out. And who's there is Dorn. So, quick thing on Dorn. So Rogel Dorn
Primarch.
is another Primarch. So War Master Horus is a Primarch. Rogel Dorn is a Primarch. So just like the Astartes are genetic sons to their Primarchs, the Primarchs are genetic sons to Big E. So way back in the day, science, magic, not magic stuff, he made a bunch of these guys with his like DNA. So they're brothers. That's how they see each other. They see each other as brothers, and they're very different. They all have a resemblance to their gene father, so they all kind of look like the War Master, but they also look very different. Dorn is like a very stoic, and I seen him with a mustache, but I think it's cooler. I've seen him without a mustache anyway, but he's like stoic, quiet. He's known as like he can build the best defenses. You know, his boys are called the Imperial Fists. They're like known to be like, you know, the baddest dudes at building walls and crap. Anyway, so he's there and they're talking. So while they're talking, Loken and the Mournival are hanging out with some of his guys, and they're all joking and stuff. They're kind of like breaking their stones because the Big E's called him back to the Imperial Palace to like refortify it, and they're kind of like, haha, like you guys,
Later.
yeah, like you losers, like we're gonna be out here like kicking ass, and then by the time you know you guys come out, it's going to be over. You know what I mean? Like the crusade's going to be over. And Sigismund is Sigismund is to Dorn like Abaddon is to Horus. Like he's like his
First captain.
Yeah, first captain. Yeah. So he kind of like does this whole like grim dark quote where he's like, you know, he kind of laughs like this is never going to end. I think he says like, Logan, I thought you were like smart, man. Like I thought you were like you know, I thought you were smarter than this. Actually, he said right here that, Brother Loken, I have much heard about you. All of it good. I have not imagined I would discover such naivety in you. We will spend our lives fighting to secure this Imperium, and then I fear we will spend the rest of our days fighting to keep it intact. There is such involving darkness amongst the stars. Even when the Imperium is complete, there will be no peace. We will be obliged to fight on to preserve what we have fought to establish. Peace is a vain wish. Our crusade may one day adopt another name, but it will never truly end. In the far future, there will only be war. Which is like the quote of the whole series. Not Horus Heresy, but like Warhammer.
Warhammer.
In the far future, there's only war.
There's only war.
So yeah, so he kind of like, you know, laughs at him, calls him like a little like, you know, calls him like a baby. Like, what are you, stupid, man? Like, you know, we're never gonna end this war. But, you know, there's kind of jab back and forth. It's a good little thing is showing how these guys interact. You know what I mean? Like, these guys are like cousins in a sense. You know, that's how they see each other. You know, like they're like joking each other, calling each other bitch and pussy and stuff. Well, I'll beat you up. You know what I mean? And the other times you'll see them fighting and stuff, like sparring and all. But a cool part near the end of this chapter is where Big Boy Dorn like pulls Loken aside, which is like crazy for even a captain of the Astartes. So like a human in this world would very rarely even see a space marine, right? Like it's not. They said like it's so hard sometimes to grasp the scale because you look at this. I said the word legion of space marines, right? So there's like I forget over 1,000 of them, which sounds like a lot. But then you got to put in a scale of how many people are out there.
Billions.
Yeah.
Of planets.
Billions of planets, trillions of people. So like a normal person, I'm a farmer on some backwater land. I will never ever see a space marine, like ever even see one, most likely, you know. So he put it in perspective of a space marine to see another Primarch is super rare. So he's like, you know, he's like giddy as a schoolgirl. He's like, oh, like, you know, like he's like, no, like he can't believe that Dorn wants to. Not only is he seeing Dorn, he wants to talk to him. So he pulls him aside, and he tells him something like blows his mind. He's like, hey man, he's like, I've been watching you, and I've been in your corner, and I 100% approve that you're in the Mournival. I think you're important. And he mentions Naismith again. He says, you know, he's like, I think that you know, your character is just what Horus needs. You got a couple other guys in there that are a little more like warmongerish, you know. They're like, you know, they're quick to fight, but I think that you're a good choice. So that, you know, it ends like on a high note for Loken. He's like super excited, and he's reassuring himself that he's doing the right thing. You know, like he joined the Mortal and everything's going well, and that's where chapter ends. The next chapter, we're about to go down to the surface.
Whispering. What is it?
The Whisper Heads is where we're going.
Whisper
The next
Heads.
chapter begins like on the embarkation deck.
Yeah. So that. Let me find my place. Are we starting 7 now?
Yeah, 7.
Yeah. So 7. This is where things start to get more into what I thought I was getting into. You start to meet like all these characters. All right, scene set. Let's go. Hey, we kick ass. That's what we do. We're out here taking names. But now they are told to, hey, we're going to get this last bastion. We're going to help out our army bros. And we're going to keep doing what we've done for the last 200 years, which is just kicking butt. You see this side of Loken where if you were a normal human being in this position, so they're loading up on, they're called Stormbirds, which are basically just, I know they're super high sci-fi, super cool. I picture like Vietnam era helicopters, but they're just obviously from the future.
They're like boxes, like rectangles with wings and like jet propulsion.
Yeah.
They look like I think in my head I think of like Osprey.
Yeah,
Like
they look
that
like ospreys.
style,
Yeah. And they're loading up, and they're like, "Hey, we're about to go." And I think they do like is this where they do the Oath of Moment?
Yeah. So Keeler's there. So we haven't really talked about Keeler. She is a remembrancer. They mentioned her earlier.
She's a picturist.
Yes, picturist, an imagist. So she's she's a photographer. But in this world, like, you know, I'm pretty sure, like, so it's this dichotomy again. So she has like this old timey, like in my head, it's like an old timey kind of camera, but like the pictures are like in her head too. And then later on, when she has to view them, she has to like plug them into like a
and he's got
like,
in a dark room with water.
Yeah. It's kind of weird, but yeah. So she's there and she's snapping pictures.
And so they're on the embarkation deck, and you get this like scene of them, just these thousands of just troopers loading up on these hard helicopter Osprey jetpacks, and it's just this super motivating scene. And you get this cool little moment where Loken takes what's called Oath of Moment, and for what that is in this, it happens a lot. It gets mentioned a lot. An Oath of Moment is, I am swearing my life to the completion of this task. If I don't succeed, I'm a failure. I get dishonored, but I will promise on whoever's putting this Oath of Moment on me, on their name and on mine, that I'm going to do this. And it's a really special moment that only Space Marines share with each other.
Yeah.
But they have this moment with the Remembrancers. And there's like a couple of them. The big one is Euphrates, because she's able to take a picture of it. And this picture is subtly sprinkled throughout this entire series. Is people be like, oh, like that's the Oath of Moment with Loken in front of the Mournival.
Yeah, so the big moment also was that it was, so usually he's the commander, he would take an Oath of Moment from one of his lieutenants or whatever, but it was like the Mournival came out, because they're not going, it's just Loken and his boys. So they come out, and it was like, oh, you know, it's a big deal. So, you know, he took his Oath of Moment saying whatever it was, and that was like a cool shot, because it's like all 4 of those like big wig dudes, you know what I mean, doing the...
But then... Then they load up, they start heading to the drop site, and again, they're picturing there's flak, there's people, like there's already shots, there's a lot of radio traffic, and then they start getting static on their Vox. Their Vox stops working. They're totally high tech, not a radio, it's a Vox. But it says they're getting a lot of static and feedback, and the pilot's telling Loken's like, oh, well, like fix it. I don't know, I'm not a radio guy. Like, no, like, we're getting a signal from the surface, but it's not our guys. And they're like, oh, okay, well, what's it saying? Well, it says Samus. And so then the quote here is...
Oh, yeah, the whole thing is kind of crazy.
It's a voice like a gust of dry desert wind, said Samus. That's the only name you'll hear, Samus. It means the end and the death, Samus. I am Samus. And then it just repeats, Samus is all around you. Samus is the man beside you. Samus will gnaw upon your bones. Look out, Samus is here. Now, if you were a normal human being and you're getting radio traffic, you've seen 200 Years of War. You know a thing or two because you've seen a thing or two. you're probably going to think that it's just psychological. They think it's a game.
That's
and
what
that's
he
what
did.
Logan says. He's like, hey, this is a game. This is 100% someone messing with us. Now, if I'm a 27-year-old helicopter pilot, I'm like, all right, what the hell's going on here?
Well, also, in the Stormhawks with them, this is the first time that they let a gang of Remembrancers go down.
Oh, yeah.
So Keeler's there, Cinderman's there, and I think the rest are like kind of like
Just the
no-namers.
no-name people.
And I don't know if it says or not, but yeah, they have Vox, so yeah, so they're hearing this.
Everyone's hearing it.
I'm like, what?
Everyone's hearing it. And
you'd
like,
be scared to hell.
And it's
You
like
know what I mean?
you're like a pencil pusher, like poet, and then someone's whispering in your ear, hey, I'm right here.
gnaw on your bones.
And
you know what I
then,
mean?
and I think,
yeah, they disregard it. Like,
everyone
Logan's like,
disregarded it. But then, Euphrates like, or no, Euphrates like, bro, I'm hearing that. Like, I hear it, and like, oh yeah, it's whatever. It's just the radio. She's like, I don't got a radio.
Yeah.
She's like,
I think they mentioned that. That's in the next chapter. They mentioned that she tells Cinnamon, yeah, she can hear the thing on the radio. But you mentioned the pilot, right? Which is funny.
Oh hell yeah!
The pilot of the Stormhawk is not a 27-year-old guy. It's not even a dude at all. So I think who he talks to is like some dude who's like on the radio. You know what I mean? Like another Astartes. He's like, hey man, fix this shit. He's like, but the pilot, as described in the book, is piloted by servitors. So I'm just trying to think. Quick way to tell a servitor. Okay, so AI is not allowed.
Big no.
Many years ago, there was a war with AI. Like before all this happened, and it wiped. Like it was part of how we all got jacked up. We made AI, and then and Terminator happened. It's just kind of Terminator. Terminator happened, and now we're beyond Terminator. So no AI. There's no like. There's computers and there's robots in a sense, but none of them are thinking on their own. So how do we get past that? How do we get robots that can do things, but we need them to think? Insert servitor. Servitor is a person who has committed a crime usually, or just unlucky enough, and then you are like lobotomized by the Mechanicum guys and like turned into a robot. So in this case, the servitor is like the torso of a man is now fused into the cockpit, and through his brain and wires and all, he just flies, and he don't move. He just flies.
He
the
just
plane.
stays there.
And they don't go into details here, but like I've read other things where like if their organics need to be kept alive, they feed them like nutrient paste. There's other ones that are like a servitor, like he's got beefed up legs and forklift arms, and he just like moves boxes all day. You know what I mean? And they have combat ones. They have ones that are like planted into weapons, and like their arm is a gun, and then there's like a torso, and they just like fire.
But it's not AI.
It's not AI.
That's a person.
Because there's a person in there. Yeah. So that's kind of like a real. Servitor's like we haven't mentioned the word yet, but grimdark is the word that is described to like this setting. I don't know if they made that word up, but it's the idea is that the Warhammer 40K world is called grimdark. So it's darkness. It's sad. It's just no hope at all.
hope.
And I think one of the most like great examples is a servitor. So like in this world, you could probably going to die, right? You're probably going to live on a world of billions of people and just like slave away in a mine and die. But you could be unlucky enough where you don't die. You're made into a robot. They have servitors like who like control doors. Who like you go up to them and like they have a retinal scanner in their face and they scan your face and they let you in the door like that. And then you do that for eternity.
And you're conscious.
Yeah,
you are totally conscious. You are still you. You just don't have control of yourself.
Yeah, you're lobotomized. I'm not a doctor and all, but like so like, yeah, your brain is still functioning because they have to have your brain functioning because they can't have fake brains. So I assume you probably know I'm sitting here and I just can't move. I'm just gonna fly. So like I just picture this poor thing when they put the plane back in and then the lights go dark in the hangar bay and they don't need the plane for 5 weeks and he just sits there. And he can't move. And but he's alive. He's awake. I don't know. So that's it's quick, a little longer than I thought. Servitors. You'll see them all over. They're sprinkled all throughout this book, all throughout this whole universe of servitors, battle servitors, combat servitors, menial task servitors, medical, all this stuff. So it's kind of cool. So that ends that chapter. So the next chapter begins with now we're on the planet, right? We land on a planet. We're here to kick some ass. And so Logan's thinking like, all right, he's coming with strategy. He's got, a bunch of guys. He's in charge, right? So a while back when he was elevated to Mornival, he had to delegate some of his duties to his other guys. So he had Vipus, who's like Nero Vipus is like a vet kind of dude. He had him lead. He's like, hey man, you now are in charge of the tent. You're technically in charge of the tent. I'm in the Mornival, right? And there's a guy named Jubal who was technically like seniority wise above Vipus, right? He had to talk about it and chat their back about, with Torgadon about it, and he's like, hey man, he's a big guy, he'll understand, I mean, you go with your gut. He wanted Vipus. So now he thinks, all right, well, to make it up to him, I'll let Jubal lead the assault. But he leads the assault behind the Terminators. Now, Terminator, we're not talking Arnold Schwarzenegger Terminator, all right? So the Terminators they're going to storm the stronghold. So what is a Terminator exactly? It's called Tactical Dreadnought Armor. So you look at pictures of Space Marines, it's that armor, but beefier.
Thick boys.
Thick boys, yeah, thick boys. They're walking. They're not like on tracks, but they're pretty much walking tanks. They lose movement and mobility, but they gain like so much armor. Like nothing can, like very little can penetrate their armor. So they're going to lead with they're gonna like pretty much walk up, just walk in that place, right? There's like a one entrance in, and it's got all these great shots to kill people, and the army's like, man, we've been getting eaten up, and nothing's gonna happen. He's like, all right, well, we'll take care of this. So the Terminator just start walking towards the we'll say the entrance, and the rebels are just blasting them, but it don't matter. Like nothing is going to like nothing is going to stop these guys. So they're going to head in. Before they head in, one of the soldiers tells Loken that the place is haunted, and he like snaps at him like, "What the hell? You want me turned into a servitor?" You know what I mean? Like he didn't say that, but like like
you want to open doors?
Yeah, you know what I mean. So like he scoffs at it. He scolds him. He says, "Shut up. That's not how we deal with things." But it's building on this like what's like the people think the regular rebel rabble thinks it's haunted. They're hearing this stuff. You know what I mean? So the Terminator take the bridge. There's no problem. The rebels give everything they got, but it don't matter, right? And that's where you said earlier. There's a part where Cinnamon's talking to Keeler, and he's like, "Oh, I learned a little bit about this the history here. This is supposed to be like the lair of some ancient god, whatever." And that's where Keeler's like, "Oh, like Samus, I can hear. Yeah, I hear that. But she ain't got an earpiece.
Yeah,
and it's like woo." You know what I mean? It gets like spooky. You know what I mean? Like, so, the Astartes go in there, and it's not even like these aren't the guys they fought before. The tall boys.
Yeah, they aren't they're Invisibles.
They're just like it's like the planet's taking over, and then this is like a little small bastion of like regular dudes who were like, no way. You know what I mean? Like, so they're just fighting, and they take them out. It says here that they held out against the army guys for like several months. And they had no chance. They go in there and just rip them up.
So yeah, the assault lasted 68 minutes.
Yes.
I was like, they just fought and slugged it out with the regular army for months.
Yeah, months. You know what I mean? So it just it's a good little thing, and Dan Adams puts in there. It shows like how much more intense these guys are, and it's precision in a sense, but it's like brutal. You know what I mean? Like later on in this chapter, or maybe next chapter, the Rems are allowed to come in and check it out, and like they're throwing up, and because it's like it's not just like it's not like you think of nowadays like silent insertion like one to head, one to chest. It's like no, these guys go in there and like rip them apart with their chain swords. And actually, it's a real quick side note. Their bullets are like grenades themselves. The shoe was called a bolt gun, and the bolts are like the size of beer cans, and when they hit you, they explode. You know what I mean? So it's not just like a bullet, like a 9mm going through you. Mm-hmm. It hits you, and then so like the scene would be like just visceral everywhere. You know what I mean? Like, and then whoever wasn't killed by a gun would be like torn apart by a chainsaw. You know what I mean? Like, so it's just really like
just meat paste everywhere.
And that goes back to what they were saying before about the War Master is like hesitant times to release them because it's so shocking to normal people to see how this goes down. You know what I mean? Like it's not pretty at all. You know what I mean? Let's see. Okay, so while they're in there, they're searching through, and they're finding like trinkets of devotion. They're finding like little fanes, little like shrines all over. You know what I mean? He talks to Vipus about, where is that? Real quick. Page 167. He talked to Vipus about like how these people are holding on to the last thing they got. So like, because he's like confused, like what what are they doing here, like praying and shit and all that stuff, because it's alien to them, you know what I mean? But Logan's kind of like trying to give him insight, like they're just holding on to what they got, you know what I mean? This is all they got. They're just humans, and we're coming against them, you know what I mean? Like, this is all they got to do. This is all they got left, because a lot of these guys, if you would see this, you'd be confused if you're one of these soldiers, because like this is not your world at all. You're not, little shrines and trinkets and all. It's like, what's going on? So he kind of explains that, and then Logan's wandering around. He sees Jubal. Jubal's like standing by like a pool of water, and he's just like staring. I'm sorry. He's standing by a wall that has like a trickling water going down it, and he's like staring at the water. And he's like, "Yo, man, like, where are the rest of your guys? Dude? Like, where is everyone? Like, like what's going on?" And he's staring off the water, and he starts yapping about Samus, and like comes at him. He starts attacking him, and he's screaming Samus, Samus, Samus. You know what I mean? Like, and that's how that chapter ends. So something's happened with Jubal, which is like really weird, because this shouldn't happen. And then we'll kind of go into it as we go on.
God, so yeah, okay, if you were any normal person, you'd be like, yeah, this place is haunted. This was not.
Yeah, exactly. So, and that's what they're getting from the army guys. They're all spooked out. You know what I mean? Like, they're out on the outside getting smoked, but they're also talking to the people who have not rebelled against them, and they're saying, "Oh yeah, the Whisperheads. That's like spooky shit. That's like where that's where Samus is." And like, what's Samus? Oh, Samus is like one of our gods, and that's where Samus lives. And you know what I mean? So like, you'd be spooked out, But these guys are so indoctrinated through hypnosis and just generations of this science and all that. Like, it's just so far into them that it's not fear. It's just like confusion. You know what I mean? Like, so. His guys are missing. He's good. What's wrong with you, man? What's wrong with you, man? And he like turns on Logan and starts attacking.
Yeah. So we go into. So we're left on this cliffhanger. Jubal is just staring at a wall, and he says, "I am Samus." Like, oh, okay. Then Dan pulls a little Tarantino on us.
Yeah.
We're gonna go back a couple days.
Yeah, go back to him.
We're gonna go back a couple days. Which brings us to one of my favorite little interactions and windows into who the Astartes are. He's in an interview with, I believe it's
Mercedes.
Yeah. And she asks him, "As I understand it, you have nothing in you that we ordinary mortals might know as fear." And it was a very interesting question, because he responds, "The Astartes have no fear. It is unthinkable to us." And then she responds, "Because you have trained yourself to master it? No, we are trained for discipline. But the capacity for fear is bred out of us. We are immune to its touch." So the ignorance and the self-importance that is plaguing the entire Imperium of man, again, feeding into this grim dark of self-importance of there's only war. This is all I know. I don't know fear. It creates this pedestal that you start to realize even the good Boy Scouts like Logan are still part of the problem. And he still thinks that we are unable to... They don't even think it's biologically possible to be scared.
Yeah.
That is how... But this guy's been at war for 200 years. He's seen his boys die. And he's saying, yeah, man, I don't know a single guy that's been afraid. Yeah, it's just not possible. It's like, I don't get sick. I don't get afraid. I mean, like, yeah, I eat my oatmeal and I go sit in my little Spartan cave. That's what I do. And so this is how they set up this chapter, because then it takes us back.
Yeah, you're back in the mountains.
Into the mountain. So we're back in the whispering. God, I always forget. Whisperheads. Yeah. And it's just a horror movie. He sees Jubal. Jubal is no longer this warrior that he knew. He doesn't even recognize him. Yeah,
so it jumps right back into it. He's like fighting. He's not trying to kill him. He's just trying to maybe freaking choke him out and stuff. He's trying to subdue him. But as strong as everyone is, they say like he's incredibly strong. You know what I mean? Like, something's wrong here. You know what I mean? Like, and then they go through a cool little fight scene, and like they're fighting with the sword and knife and all, and then like. He eventually he kills him. You know what I mean? He almost gets killed by him. You know what I mean? Yeah. But he ends up killing Jubal. He's But with that, that don't happen, man. Like that. Like side note to this, like that does not happen.
Nope.
Like they don't fight each other. It's never happened. Ever.
They say the term unthinkable.
Yes, never happened.
And again, we just talked about it pages earlier, and now he just fought and he thinks killed his brother.
Yeah.
And he says, was this fear? Was he tasting it now? After all, was this how terror cowed a mortal man? So he is eating his words. He's realizing that, like, all certainty, the things he held the holiest, brother killing brother, fear.
And then he is feeling something he's never felt before. So it could be fear.
Is it fear? Yeah.
But we don't know. But what he does is he goes and finds his mentor. Cinnamon's there. Because, and what else is he going to do? He's got to, he goes and I'm going to get the smartest dude I know. You know what I mean? And he brings him in. Into to show him what's happening, he's explaining the scene. He's showing him Jubal
biological weapon.
Yeah, he's like, nah, yeah. Cinnamon's staying to the party line. No, he's like, because he's like, oh, is this spirits? Is this like this kind of? He's like, no. He's like, it's got to be a disease. And they're like, we don't get diseases, you know what I mean? Like, well, and he's like trying to explain it away, you know what I mean? Like through life, like as you expect he would, because he's an iterator. That's what he does, you know what I mean? Like he's sticking to the imperial line no matter what. There's got to be an explanation. It ain't hocus pocus, mumbo jumbo, you know what I mean? All that stuff. But as he's speaking, the dead guy gets up, and then he's starting to swell out of his armor. So he's like growing. His armor is breaking and he's like muscles are bulging, and he's becoming like this monstrosity, you know what I mean? And he kind of like goes berserk and starts attacking people. It's not like a focused attack. He's not like trying to kill Logan. He's just like spazzing out.
Berserking, yeah.
And it says he runs down a corridor and a bunch of them members there and they see, and Keeler says that she describes it as he's moving. He's not moving normal. It's like as if he is like moving broken. It says flashes of yellow light and weird movements, as if like he's there but he's not there. He's there but he's not there.
He's lagging.
You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like he's lagging. And then this chapter ends with the monstrosity that was Jubal like coming up face to face with Keeler.
Yep.
And then it ends. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't say what happens there, but it's like coming towards her.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So, and that's what happened. And then Chapter 10 starts a little beyond that, and it's Loken sitting in some kind of like tent of some sorts outside the Whisperheads now, and he's all distraught, and he's talking to Ezekiel Abaddon, and he says, Abaddon said, "Would you kill it?" And he says "it," which I found was funny. You know what I mean? They're no longer calling this Jubal or anything. They're saying, I killed it, and he said it took 90 bolt rounds, which is like crazy. So we said before, 90 bolt rounds. So 90 self-propelled grenades to smash into this monster and officially kill it. And the official line that they're going to give to everybody is that it was a beast, some kind of monster. Not even a monster, sorry, like some kind of wild animal that was inside of the mountain. Abaddon suggests that, that's that. We keep this quiet. We're not going to get this out that something went wrong with Jubal, whether it be disease or whatever. We're not sure. We're going to keep it out. Logan doesn't like that. So Logan, as we said before, is all about the truth. He wants, he thinks the truth shall set you free. Lying and deceiving is wrong. So he's not happy about this. But Abaddon's saying, here's what we're doing. And he's not really buying it, man. And he Abaddon's first captain and all, but he's not backing down. But in comes Big Daddy. Horus comes in, tries to comfort him, and he kind of like gives him a little bit of info that kind of he thinks will help quell his mind. So he kind of tells him about the warp. Now they know what the warp is. They know it's a thing that they go through to like. Travel. And they also know that that's how people pull psychic energy. Mm. So they know that it has, like, power. They don't relate it to any kind of, like, magic, hocus pocus, mumbo jumbo. It's just a realm of energy that some people can tap into. We use it to travel through, but that's it. So the War Master kind of, talks Logan down from the ledge and says, look, the warp can get in your mind, as we know with Psykers. Psykers are dangerous. The warps, gets into them and they can't control themselves. And that's what happened to Jabal. He was mad. He was frustrated that you overlooked him for the promotion. And it was kind of like, he was weak, and the warp got into him, And he kind of talks about, like, the warp is related to why the Big E is not around anymore. And I guess it'd be a good point. Talk about why the Big E's not around anymore.
Well, like,
I said it, and I'm like, wait,
yeah.
no one even knows why he's not around.
Well, that's why, like, that is so you get this trouble with Loken, and Loken's like, I just watched my brother try to kill me. I killed my brother, and Horus is like, hey brother, hey man, listen, the warp's big, scary, lots crazy shit's going on. Let me tell you what's going on. And so he's like, yeah, like the warp's a little wild right now, and Big Daddy had to go home. Now, I don't know why Big Daddy went home. Actually, I'm really mad that Big Daddy went home.
Yeah, so that's...
And he has this little window.
Yeah, and that's the first time, because I can't remember if it mentions Olenor before, the battles of Olenor. I think later on it talks about the triumph at Olenor, which is like where you officially find out where Horus has made the War Master. But this is the first time you hear, Biggie had to go deal with shit back home that deals with the warp. And this is the very first time that you see, he's a little slighted at that fact. Even though he's in charge, he's the War Master, he's also like, I think he said here, he's like, he left the Crusade for things more important than the Crusade. And Horus is like, he doesn't like that. He's like, what can be more important than roaming the stars with your boys or your sons, kicking ass? And yeah, it's the first little inkling that Dan Abnett and I guess the whole story in general shows of, Horus having like doubts about what is, happening to him, and to everyone as a whole, you know what I mean? He kind of feels slighted, you know what I mean? He's like, like, what's going on here? He's like, yeah, you had to leave, but I don't really agree with it. You know what I mean? And then this chapter ends, it goes back to the meeting with Mercedes. And she's kind of apologizing to Logan for not going down. She was invited also to go to the Whisperheads, and she didn't make it. She says she had to stay back because her friend Ignace Carcasse was all beat up, and she kind of asked Logan, he needs some help. Maybe you can help him out. And she tries to comfort him a little bit, but he's like messed up. He's not really interested in it. And then that's where the chapter ends. And that actually ends part 1 of the entire book. And now we move on to part 2, which like jumps somewhere way,
way totally different.
Yeah, way different. Tarantino style jump again. This part's called Brotherhood in Spiderland, which is like, what the hell? You know what I mean? And so how does chapter 1 start? This is because now it's like totally new character.
Totally different. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I struggle with the bolter porn. I struggle with like the nonsense attacking, and I get it. There is a whole lot of that going on in the part 2. So
yeah, it is. Like a lot of it.
It didn't take me out of it because it's awesome. I mean, it's the superhumans fighting super bugs. What's not to love? But we get thrown into just a whole new medley of characters, whole new
Legion,
a whole different Legion. So yeah, just to preface that, we are introduced to the Emperor's Children. Again, we met Dorn, we met Horus, and now we're gonna meet another Primarch, good old Sanguinius.
No. Oh yeah, Sanguinius is not from Emperor's Children.
Oh, sorry, that's no. Oh, we don't even meet.
No.
Yeah, we don't even meet.
You don't meet Fulgrim.
Fulgrim in this one.
No.
So we get introduced to the Emperor's Children.
Yeah, so Emperor's Children is like, another Legion. Just think like they're all their own army, all fighting for the same big army. So we had the Lunar Wolves under Horus. We kind of briefly met the Imperial Fists under Dorn, and now you meet another Legion called the Emperor's Children, and they are the progeny of a Primarch named Fulgrim, who you don't really see
I
in
don't
this.
think
I don't think he's in this book
at all.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, so everyone has a different vibe. There's the Lunar Wolves, who are Horus and his boys. Then you got Doran, who love building castles. And then you get Fulgrim and the Emperor's Children, who are just really full of themselves.
They're like fancy boys.
They really, imagine a bunch of just artistic theater kids, but they're jocks. And they're really confident. And they're prom king, and they're also were on Broadway. Like, they're just a whole lot of just everything.
I picture like Three Musketeers style.
Yeah.
Like they fight very elegantly, and they're dressed really nice. I mean, they also wear the armor. You know what I'm saying? But like they're always like very they're holding perfection. That's their thing. Perfection.
Yeah, they're like, man,
they want to do everything perfect, and it bleeds. Sometimes a lot of the writing can be this very one-sided, and they come off as very pompous. But some of the characters, like one we meet here, is like shows it in a different direction about perfection being like nothing you can attain is something to strive to, which can be a good thing. It's cool, you know. I mean, other ones take it to the heart where it's like, you know, I am perfect, ha ha ha, you know, that stuff. So
yeah, we get thrown into the Emperor's Children right off the bat. Saul Tarvitz, first character you meet, and he is knee deep in bug guts. He's fighting the Megarachnids. That is all you get from the beginning. They don't tell you a whole lot more, but then they're rolling with it, man. They're rolling with it. Tarvitz is out there slugging it with his boys. They're on this really, really scary, desolate planet. They don't even know what it is called. They just call it 14020. And they're just out there fighting for their lives. They're looking for their other brothers who went down earlier. They realized that they sent the Blood Angels, who are a whole nother legion.
Another legion.
But they said that they were launched into this assault really headstrong. They were not really sure why they were, again, flashback to the room with the turret that's just mowed everyone down. There's a storm on this planet, so they have no radio communication. They sent the Blood Angels down, and they got one little blip back from the troops that were down there that said this planet is murder. And
so they nickname it murder. The Blood Angels send a message out through their little dream messages saying that we need help, and the Emperor's Children decide to show up. And instead of like, this is kind of like a show of how they operate. Instead of like showing up and being like, all right, let's take some time to recon all this stuff, they show up and like I said, they get like, you know, there's a storm raging. They can't get any kind of signal on anyone, and they get like a quick signal of, you know, hey, they're right here. There's our boys, and then they just boom and send guys down. You know what I mean? That they go right into it. You know, to try. I mean, so to their, you know, to give them credit, it's like, you know, they think that their cousins, brothers, whatever, are like, you know, in deep peril. You know what I mean? But it's a flaw definitely because they don't do any kind of like, you know, well, what else is on there? Like, you know, why is this storm doing this? Blah blah blah. You know what I mean? There's also like a beacon that they
found an alien or a foreign beacon. They didn't say alien. They said foreign beacon.
They don't even investigate that. But yeah, the chapter starts like just like, you know, in a battle scene with Tarvitz and his buddy Lucius. Yeah.
So yeah, you get an introduction to Lucius. Ambitious, arrogant, but man, that boy deals with the sword.
Yes,
he is good with the sword. And they're just slugging it out. They're complaining. They're trying to figure out what the hell is going on. You're introduced to the Megarachnids, which, I mean, if you've seen Starship Troopers,
that's what I think of. Yeah, I think in my head I think of more like bugs, but like made of stone almost, because they had those trees and
technology too.
Yeah, it's all like bio stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like in this world, they would be kind of close to the Tyranids, which are like bugs. You know what I mean? But like in my head, I always like they're like more like stone colored and white. But yeah, so like, you know, they're like these vicious, you know, 10-foot tall bugs that are like, you know, sharp claws and big teeth, and they're fast as hell. And Lucius and Tarvitz are down there fighting. They're being led by a guy named Lord Commander Eidolon, so he's in charge of the whole thing. Fulgrim's not around, so he's in charge of the whole thing, and they're in trouble. You know what I mean? Like they're getting
and then
beat up.
And Eidolon, God, everyone has had an Eidolon in their life.
Yeah, he's like the biggest
just the
dick,
worst, dude. So yeah, you got he was your coworker who got promoted to supervisor and didn't deserve it, and he's letting everybody know that he's a supervisor, and he's terrible. He's bad at his job.
Yeah.
And so they're trying to get through this, and they finally realize that they found the Blood Angels.
Yeah, well, so it's where this chapter kind of quick. It ends with like, it says the Lunar Wolves arrive. I think it's the end of chapter 1. And then 2, it goes right back down to like talking about the Mecharagnans. And it says, so we get a description of them: 9 foot tall bugs, armor plated, fast as hell. They're big as hell. They got like a hive mind, so like there's no way to break them. You know what I mean? You can't like kill 10. They're all run away. They're just like nonstop. So we see how cocky Lucius is. Lucius is like tearing him up, but he's like talking about how I want to catch one so I can fight it later. You know what I mean? Like just like goofy stuff that is like very pompous. You know what I mean? Like like his boy's getting slaughtered left and right. But he's like he's really good, so he's all right. And he's like cutting them in half, and he's dancing around them and all. I picture like flips and stuff. You know what I mean? And so they really focus on how cocky he is compared to Tarvitz, who is more like grounded and centered. You know what I mean? I thought a cool thing is here they talk about how they fight with shields, which I've seen in pictures sometimes, but you don't really see a whole lot of like the Astartes fighting with shields.
They you feel like you only see those when they're in like close combat or like ship to ship. But this guy, they're out there walking around with actual physical shields. Yeah. So then back to what you're saying. So they're fighting. They lose like 9-10 guys. Then here comes some flying ones. You know what I mean? It's getting like crazy. And then they find these big, like, this is what I think of the concrete, because they say they're big white trees. Mm-hmm. So I picture these big concrete style trees with no leaves, and impaled on these trees are Blood Angel, Astartes, and Emperor's Children. And so they're impaled on them, and they're still kind of alive, and those flying things are like eating them. So it's like, you imagine how big these are, because these Astartes are like 8 feet tall, and then these bugs, or whatever, are like big enough to be pecking at them. You know what I mean? Like, so they take them, and they grab them, and they throw them on the tree, and then they, peck at their bodies as they like, flail and stuff like that. And that chapter kind of ends like right there where we find the trees. And it's just these 2 chapters bounce back and forth, is showing you how bad the situation is here on Murder. Everyone who goes down seems to be just getting smashed to pieces. Like the Emperor's Children are barely surviving. You know what I mean? Like they find the tree, and then it ends, and then we're back up on the Vengeful Spirit. Yep, we're back with Loken. Yeah, Loken. And he's trying to talk to his Mr. Miyagi, and this Mr. Miyagi's ghosting him. Yeah, so he's still, he's like, he's still all messed up in his head about what happened on the Whisperhead. So he's like trying to, once again, talk to his mentor, trying to figure out, but he's like nowhere to be found. He goes into the library, which I imagine is probably like big as a fucking city. You know what I mean? He's like trying to find him. And then he does find him. He finds him like in some back nook, like reading these old dusty, like spooky books, you know what I mean? Like that no one really reads anymore, you know what I mean? And they're chatting a little bit, and he gives them a book called The Chronicles of Ursh. And I have in my notes like Game of Thrones. That's why I think of it. He's like, it's like a throwaway book. It's like about like, battles back in the day with magicians and shit. Yeah. But it's just for funsies. It's not like, don't take anything. It was like a colorful history. Like it wasn't like actual. It was written in their time. So like they try to explain away the magic and like, no, there wasn't actually magic. So that just introduces that book, because like, it'll have a little more reverence later. And then we jump to Loken in Jubal's room. Do you remember what he finds there? Oh, he finds what is it? A token? Yeah, so he finds like in my head I picture like a medal you would get for like a marathon or something. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like so it's like a wolf's head medal, like medallion. That's what I think, like a medallion. You know what I mean? So he's in there. He's pretty much clearing the room out. That's how it works, man. He's dead. He's dead. You got to. And they don't have much shit. They got Spartan style living conditions. So he's going through it because he's getting ready, because they're going to probably put someone else in there. So him and Vipus, his second, in command, are looking through it. He finds his medal, and they don't tell you like, but he doesn't like it. He's like, "What is this, man? Vipus, what is this?" And Vipus says the words, "I can't say." Yep. And that like sets him off. He's like, "Whoa. What are you talking about? Like, tell me." He get kind of like direct order style. You know what I mean? Tells him. And then Vipus, he's like, all right, it's a lodge medal. I've heard it's a lodge medal. Yeah. He's very, but the words I can't say have meaning. You know what I mean? Like in that. So the lodge medal. So what's a lodge, real quick? So just a brief rundown. It's like in my head, I picture it's like the VFW. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's on the ship though, but it's like where all these dudes can go outside of the rank and just shoot the shit, hang out. But it's secret.
it's not official, you know what I mean? And that's why Logan don't like it. Logan don't like secrets. He's like, you know, he don't. And he actually said he's banned people. He's like, hey, I told people that you're under my command. You ain't, you know, you're not in the lodges. It's not allowed. You know what I mean? But he's kind of like talking to the wing because like Vipus is like, all right, you know what I mean, whatever. But he leaves the medal there. He doesn't want nothing to do with it. And then he comes back the next day, and the medal's gone.
Oh no!
Ooh.
Oh no!
So that, you know, that's a little interjection. It shows you about the lodges. They'll have a way more important part in the story. But yeah, right now it seems like this harmless little hangout spot that I can go to as a regular dude, and I can, like, you know, talk to my boss and just be like, "What's up, dude?" You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to be, because, you know, this is a military organization. It's very formal. It's like, you know, yes sir, no sir, salute, and you can't go up to your captain and be like, "What's up, bro?" You know what I mean? Like, it's not how it works. You know what I mean? So that's what it is. But he don't like it. Logan don't like it because it's secret. He don't like secrets. But someone took the medal, so that's like the mystery continues in a sense. Like, who took the medal? Was it Vipus? Who knows? You know what I mean? But someone took it. And then we jump to Logan finally meeting with Carcassay.
Mm-hmm. So Logan and Carcassay they don't know it yet, but they're cut from the same cloth.
Yeah.
They really are. It's just Logan is far more stoic. He is able to keep those feelings to himself on an emotional level, but still knows how to palate and convey his worries and concerns. Carcassy does the opposite. He's a bad mouth. He's got a bad attitude. He's very full of himself. And so Logan's just trying to feel him out. He's like, what is your deal? How did you get your ass beat by your own guys? And he sees something in Carcassy. He sees that, you know, I like what you do. However, I'll sponsor you. I think he says he'll sponsor him.
Yeah, pretty much he's like saying, like, hey man, like, you know, like, anyone gives you shit, you tell me on me.
Tell him with you're literally with Logan.
Yeah, I'm with Logan. So it kind of, like, you know, gives him a little more gusto around the ship. You know what I mean? Because like, I think like these guys. So this is a military ship. Now it's full, not full, but it also has like poets running around and all these artsy fartsy people running around. So they're not fitting in. So they're probably getting into trouble here and there and getting rebuked and yelled at. And all. So now he's like, look, man, I got your back. You just, you know, if anyone gives you shit, you tell them to come see me. Mm-hmm. You know, but he gives them like an ultimatum.
He's like,
you know?
You're gonna keep making shit, but I'm gonna read and approve all of it.
Yeah, and he says like, he's like, always like, I want you to keep doing what you're doing. Like, tell the truth, write shit that piss people off. That's how it is. But yeah, he wants to like review all that stuff, and then it says how they meet at this place called the Retreat, which is like, it's like an empty space in the ship. So the ship's like, hey, you know, you're going to be getting all these fucking artsy fartsy guys. They're going to live on the ship. And I'm like, oh shit, like, you know, like, this is kind of weird. So the Retreat is probably, in my head, it's like it's like an empty space that they had for whatever. But now the artsy fartsy people want to do artsy fartsy shit, so they've congregated there and they've nicknamed the place the Retreat. So it's a place where anyone can go and find the remembrancers. That's where they hang out. They're playing dice games. They're painting the walls. You know what I mean? They're doing what they would, you know, what artsy fartsy people do. But that's like their little section. And the ship and the military people on the ship are like, okay, this is cool. Like, let them have it. They can hang out there.
And then then is this when he tracks down?
No. So Logan is asked Carcassay about Keeler. Mm-hmm. So he says, hey, how's Keeler been? And he mentions that, you know, he's like, I haven't really seen her. She's kind of been like locked up in her room since the Whisperheads. Mm. And so you get a little inkling that like she's not doing so well. So, but she's alive. Yeah. Like, as of now, you had no idea. All you saw was like, you know,
the jaws around her head.
You know, yeah, like, you know, jaws in her face, and then, you know, you saw it said Logan said he killed that thing, but didn't say what happened to her. So you find out that she is alive, and she's been a recluse. Then it jumps to Little Horus. He confronts Logan and says, "Look, man, I took that medal. You know, here it is. Boom, I got it. You know what I mean?" And he wants him to give it a try. And Logan's like, you know, Logan's mad. Well, he's like angry with him. He's like, "What? You know, how the hell can you friggin' you know, do this? Blah blah blah." And he's like, "Well, I want you to give it a try. We have an opening. You know, wink wink, because now Jubal is dead. So Loken says, well, because you asked me, he respects Horus Oxymon. He respects him. He says that, all right, I'll try it out. I'll take your medal, and then I'll come to one of your meetings. You know what I mean? And that's where that one ends. So, chapter 4, we're back on murder. Saul Tarvitz. He don't like them trees, man.
He hates those trees.
Yeah, he thinks it's disgusting what's happening to his boys. So they kind of they're at the tree. They're kind of a little respite in the fighting. These things kind of come in waves. You know what I mean? So they found the tree. They blasted all the bugs out of there, and now it's a little lull. And he's like, you know what? I don't like these trees. So some of the guys, they got explosives. So he blows the trees up. He is approached by his boss, Lord Commander Eilon, and he's like, what the hell you doing, man? Wasting the explosives. And Tarvis kind of taken back because he's like, how do you even know? What are you talking? He can see him do it. He did it a while ago, and then it's funny. This shows how the Emperor's Children operates. So he confronts Lucius, and he's like, hey, man, did you rat on me? And he's like, yeah, absolutely.
I absolutely saw that.
And you would read that and be like, man, this guy's a dick. But then he explained himself. He says, we don't hide mistakes. Acknowledging our failure is another step towards perfection. So you can kind of find something good in that, you know what I mean? Because Lucius is not like he's not ratting on him to try to be a rat in a sense per se, but he's saying, hey, this is who we are, man. That was wrong what you did. You wasted explosives, wrong or right. But he sees it as wrong. He's like, I'm not going to hide that because we don't hide our mistakes. You know what I mean? So I found that a little bit okay. Because a lot of times these guys are written so one-dimensional, the Emperor's Children are one-dimensional where it's they're always just seen as pompous and backstabbing, but that wouldn't work if they were all like that. You know what I mean? They would fall apart.
Well, I mean, okay.
Now some are like that. You know what I mean?
Spoilers. There's some strife later on within the Emperor's Children, but I mean, Saul's a really good example. Tarvitz is honestly probably my favorite character. He turns into my favorite character for sure because he doesn't have to jive. He doesn't. I mean, he sees perfection as something totally different as what another person sees perfection as, and you realize, hey, you know what? That is something that at one point was highly encouraged in their brotherhood. Was that perfection doesn't need to be uniform. Perfection is not cookie cutter, and I think Saul embodies that really well. He is what the Emperor's Children want to be, but not what they end up being. But yeah, I mean, Lucius is like, hey, I didn't snitch on you. I just told the truth. Which is, I mean, you snitched, but
yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard. I saw it as a kind of a kind of good thing. It showed them in a good light. Hey, man, this, this is who we are, man. You know what I mean? We don't hide our mistakes. But yeah, it's good. It's cool to see the different their thing is perfection, right? So it's cool to see how Tarbit sees it, and then how Lucius sees it. You know what I mean? And as we'll see as time goes on. One's more honorable than the other, you know what I mean, in a sense. So they blow it up. They had their little tiff there or whatever. But another form of bug thing arises, and it's I picture a big fat beetle.
Yeah.
From Starship Troopers, the one that shot fire out his butt. But but instead of that, it eats the remnants of the tree and then poops it back out, and they start rebuilding the tree. They're like, hey, well, we're going to rebuild our tree. And then they're quickly overwhelmed. It's looking bleak. There's Lucius is stuck in the concrete, and Tarvitz is down to his last bullet and all, and then drop pods, drop pods are quick assault. Instead of a plane, they can shoot these little pods with 6 guys in it. So drop pods fall, and it's the Luna Wolves. They get dropped on their location.
Total Marvel.
Yeah.
Don't worry, brother.
Dragon Ball Z landing. You know what I mean? But it's Torgadon who is leading the assault. But boom, that's where that chapter ends. And then now, I said back and forth. We are now in chapter 5. We're a little bit before that moment. We are on the Emperor's Children ship. Not aboard the Vengeful Spirit. I'm not sure of this name, but anyway, so the Luna Wolves are now welcome aboard the Emperor's Children ship.
The Misericord.
Okay, Misericord.
You can Google how to pronounce that one. But yeah, so you get an introduction to how things are done. I like this because it talks about. It's almost like we're looking at Loken and Horus from someone else's point of view. So we're really starting to see, how do people see the War Master? How do people see the Lunar Wolves?
What I thought was funny was, so obviously they're waiting for him. They have like a whole like little regalia,
entourage,
but like the people aboard the ship thought it was going to be like, you know, like a bunch of dudes. You know what I mean? Like oh yeah, Lunar Wolves coming, cool. They're going to come. We're going to talk about this. The doors open and it's freaking the War Master.
It's Horus himself
and all the captains of the Lunar Wolves. So like, the Emperor's children are now like buttholes puckering because like they're like, oh man, like we're in trouble. You know what I mean? Like he ain't here to like high five us.
They didn't light the candles. They didn't have anything.
Yeah, like they're not ready. In their world, they're not ready. They're like in their normal armor. They're not in their like
their ceremonial.
Yeah, you know what I mean? But and then you know, I forget his name, but the guy who's in charge because Lord Commander Ilan's away. You know, he's ready to get like, you know, slammed. But once again, War Master Horus is smart. He doesn't come there and like beat him down.
He lets the Mournival.
Yeah, so when they first meet, he's very humble. He's showing humility, and then like everyone cheers for him, like yay, like cool, like Horus is here. And then they go and they're going to have a little meeting, and this is where you would assume like he's going to beat him down. But yeah, like you said, he doesn't beat him down. He lets his boys.
Oh yeah. So and again, it's awesome if you've worked with any sort of like A-type person and you've seen them angry, you know exactly how they're talking. And it's like, it's not the disappointed dad, like, you know, I'm not mad, I'm disappointed. These guys are mad. They are coming at him.
Yeah, they're talking about like, you know, like someone should be executed.
You're sending your brothers with no recon, and you're like, you didn't wait, you didn't want to talk to anyone, like you didn't send a dream messenger.
Yeah, yeah. So it was like massive because like the like Horus just like they expect him to do it, and he just sits back and lets all these guys just yap. You know what I mean?
And then he goes, all right, guys,
and then that's like, you know, Abbott showing the you know, like the 4D chess that he's playing. You know what I mean? Like if I'm the good guy, if I don't yell at them, and they're going to be more likely to do what we want, I'll let my boys who are like on their level kind of like bicker and yell at them, but I'll be like, all right, guys, it's enough.
That's like, let's figure this out.
I'm not that mad at them. You guys need to calm down. But you know, he also is probably very angry, but he's smart. He knows, you know, how to work the things. And yeah, and then come the decision that, you know, they're going to, you know, which is funny, they're going to drop down too.
Yeah, they're like, all right, yeah, that's terrible, but we're going to go.
Well, it happens because
there's a clearing.
Yeah, so they're like, you know, all right, man, this storm, we can't see anything, and then for some reason, an opening happens in the storm, and they're like, hey, we're getting pings from, you know, our Legionis Astartes guys, and then Torgadan like steps up, like, hey, send me down, you know what I mean? I found it kind of funny because like this is exactly what these assholes
happened,
did.
but he's the War Master. He's Horus Heresying himself. No, they get the green light. I do understand though, it is a little different because they have direction. Previously, Eidolon was like, send it, and you're like putting your guys in a meat grinder. Obviously, anyone who knows anything, you don't just throw your dudes where the whole last legion was murdered.
Yeah.
But this time, they're like, hey, we see our boys. They're fighting.
Yeah,
they're actually alive, which is huge, because they thought they were lost, but they're fighting. So they're like, okay, hey, we can at the very least establish an equivalent of a beachhead here, save our boys, and then we can reconvene. And for once, there was like some sound thought instead of just like, we're gonna go in there and kick some ass, which I like. I was like, hey, they actually are putting thought into this. Horus isn't just some blind juggernaut trying to just crush planets.
Yeah. What's to say? What goes back to like how, like a turret thing, like none of these guys should be doing that if they're veterans of centuries of war. But I understand also that you have to make a story.
Yeah.
You know, it can't all. Or there'd be no drama if it's like everything is perfect and we always win. You know what I mean? So there's got to be something. But it's kind of funny, like. I don't know, you know, they don't really go into backstory Lord Commander, but the word Lord Commander Eidolon sounds like he's been doing some shit for a while, and he must be doing it right if he's in charge. And, you know, like, it seems like really dumb strategy. But, like I said, they got it, you know, you got to have some kind of a story. And, yeah, they make that decision, but then it goes back. Now we are on the Vengeful Spirit, where
we're launching it up.
They're in the bowels in some kind of, like, I picture, like, you know, like
I feel like a sewer, like pipes everywhere.
Pipes,
dudes are sitting on pipes, and it's like a Ninja Turtles layout.
Yeah. So they're Horus Oxymon is taking Loken to a lodge meeting, and Loken's got a knife. I found it's like, I mean, it's Yeah, it's funny, but also it's supposed to represent like this grimness. Like, he goes, think about what's happened a while ago. He was just fighting one of his own guys. He knows that this shit's secret, and to him, secrecy is like evil. So he's just like, a little bit of extra, a little bit extra backup in case. So yeah, they enter into this big opening. Yeah, I picture like, it says dumpsters are burning, like our drum fires and all. So it's like, it's some like sewer kind of thing, and so everyone's there. Like,
oh yeah, it's
like everyone but Logan. You know what I mean?
It was so funny because like they did make it seem like Logan was like
the only one, not
the only guy. Like, hey, he like looked around. He's like, I don't know anyone that isn't here.
Yeah,
he's like,
yeah. So I forget the guy who like the lodge master. He's like he's a name guy, but he's not like a big. He's a normal guy. And he's like, hey, bro, you don't need that knife, dude.
You gotta drop that knife, brother.
Yeah. And yeah, so you find everyone's there. It's like a big party in a sense, you know what I mean? And he's he's shocked and he's mad that everyone, and he's going back to his fundamentals. We don't keep secrets. Secrecy's bad. But then his boy, Torgadon, always the jokester, always levity, comes up, kind of tells him what it's for, like we described earlier. It's just somewhere to hang out where, your sergeant can kind of like jab at you and not, face rebuke, and, everyone can hang out and tell stories, and it's like camaraderie. And then he says, even Horus knows. And he was like, what? He was like kind of shocked, like, what the hell? Like, and he doesn't really like it, but I think that him knowing that kind of helped him, because he eventually said, all right, I see what this is. I'll give it a shot. You know what I mean? He's not a big fan of it.
He cracks a beer. I mean, like, not literally, but like,
I'm saying, and I think after Torgadon talked him down, and then he told him how like Horus knows about it. I think it was like, oh well, okay, like we infinitely trust Horus.
Yeah.
So it can't be that bad. I don't like the secrecy. I don't like it that much. I don't like that we meet in the shadows and we don't know. No, they don't know about this. But I'm also kind of like leaning towards like, okay, I get it. We're tight. Military style, we can't be acting like this every day, but you gotta let off some steam. Mm-hmm. So I get it. You know what I mean? Like, not everyone is Loken. Like, you can just be this straight laced, just have starch arse.
Yeah, he wants to go sit in his dark room and read about Biggie. Not everyone's like him.
So he agrees to join for now. He says, he's like, all right, I'll see what this is about. You know what I mean? So now, boom, jump back to murder. Torgadon blast down with his boys. Do a little clearing out, and then meet up with Tarvitz, Lucius, and Lord Commander Ilon. And this is cool. I love this part, man.
I love this part.
So Lord Commander Ilon, I would say he's probably like, the first company boss, we'll say. You know what I mean? Something like, he's like high up there. He's like high up there. Different legion, but like, rank would still, and, I don't know what company Torgadon's from, but he's like, he's like the commander of a smaller company, whatever. But he puts him in his place. He tells him, in so many words, you're an idiot. And he's like, well, you can't talk like that. And he's like, and I think he goes, hey, look up there. See that little speck? And he like points to the sky. And he's like, that's the War Master.
And he's kind of calling you dumbass.
Yeah,
right now.
He's like, he's mad at you right now. And he tells me that, you're listening to me. And he like backs down. And Tarvitz loves that. Because like you said, Tarvitz works for this guy, and he's like an asshole, and he's the worst manager, all this stuff. So he's like, so him and Torgadon like quickly become like buddies. You know what I mean?
And they were like, he hit him with the old switch. He's like, who the hell blew up that tree? And then I was like, hey, that was that fucking guy over there. That was his idea. And he's like, oh, great. That's actually why we saved you.
Exactly. So yeah, so you find out that because the tree was linked to the storm. Mm-hmm. They destroy the tree. And that's why they were building it so fast. But they destroyed a tree, and that's why they were able to see. So it turns out that Saul Tarvitz's idea, even though it was just emotionally driven, was actually really good. You know what I mean? Like, the storm broke because it destroyed trees. Lord Commander Ilon takes credit for it.
Yeah, he's like, oh, wait, actually, I did that.
Well, Torgadon says, we found you because of the trees. And I don't know if he comes out and says that was me, but he yeah, we did that. Cool. You know what I mean? But I think Torgadon talks to like a normal dude, and they're like, hey, man, it was Saul over there. Yeah. And so he talks to Tarvitz, and he's like, yeah, I did it. But like, don't make it a big, you know what I mean? Like,
he's like, I'm a servant of my commander. Commander.
He's like, hey, man, he can take credit because I'm under his command. And like, Torgadon's like, he don't like that. You know what I mean? He's like, what the fuck, dude? Like, you're the guy. Anyway, but we jump back to the Vengeful Spirit. Loken is talking to this guy named Akjan Cruz. So Akjan Cruz, they call him the half herd, which is like partially due to that he's kind of deaf, but also
He's old as hell.
he's so old. So he is like proto Astartes. I think they say he was around the time of what's called the Unification Wars.
He was barely missed the Thunder War. Like he was almost a Thunder Warrior.
Yeah, so quick history, Thunder Warriors were proto Astartes. They were the warriors that the Emperor made to clear out Earth. He used all them to clear out Earth, and then he got rid of them. There's lore on that. We don't got to get into that. But anyway, after that, he started building the Legiones Astartes, and Acton Cruz was like one of the first. He's like fucking, like Gen 1. So he's been around forever. And like, people don't really respect him. He's like he's just like a relic from an old time. And that part is just really kind of introduce you to him. He's not really a major character, but like, he'll be in it here and there, but it's kind of just, it also shows like, like not everything is perfect. You know what I mean? Like, even though they're all like brother, there's guys who they don't like, you know what I mean? They like, even though they're Shannon-Hans hypnotized soldiers who don't have no fear at all, there are like normal human attributes they have in these characters. So like, it shows that like, there's normal parts to him. This guy's like the outcast. Like, yeah, half herd. No one,
Yeah, they're like, the old half herd. And then like they just, I don't know, they treat him like he's that old guy that's been doing the job for 30, 40 years. You don't really, he knows everything, but you don't really need him.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, he doesn't do anything you can't do.
Yeah, exactly. So Loken retires to his room to read his little Chronicles of Ursh.
He goes read his little sci-fi novel.
Yeah, reads a little sci-fi
What a
novel.
nerd.
So he reads it in there, and he finds a part about men turning into demons and other magic. And he starts wondering if Cinderman like gave him that book for a reason. Because Cinderman, super smart, calculated. Why would he give, like he's reading his passages like, this is exactly what we saw. You know what I mean? Like, this is what happened. So he, after he reads that book, he starts thinking about his own death and about like legacy. And he starts rummaging through some of his stuff. He ain't got much. I think he's like, what do you like a bullet or something? Or he has like, he had like some broken piece of something that he took off of work or something.
Yeah,
like that.
he's like, it was, yes, my first battle.
Yeah,
and it's like, that's it.
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
but then he finds a data slate, which is like an iPad. That's why I picture it, like some kind
it's
of.
100%. I picture like the Fallout green.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
But it's
like
definitely like an iPad, but it's green.
So let's see, where's it at? Oh, so he finds he's looking through and he's like, oh, these are the pictures from Keeler, and he's like looking at the pictures and all, and then he finds like a little hidden one, like a secret folder,
hidden file.
He opens it up and he sees pictures of the monster that Jubal. So she was snapping as it was happening, and he sees these like weird pictures and like. It's like the beast, but in the picture he can see like a ghost image of Jubal like screaming and all, and so he's like, what the hell? And he races off to go try to find Keeler, so he goes to the retreat. He bumps into Cargaset and he's like, hey man, where's Keeler? So they go to her room. I think she's in there with like some fucking soldier.
She's banging some dude.
Yeah. So she's been drinking and stuff, just trying to get over this stuff, you know what I mean? So, Loken's like, hey man, I found these, let's talk. And she's like, I don't even care.
Say, hey man, I left it for you to do what you want.
Yeah, she's like, I know it's not a beast. That was the company line, was that it was some kind of animal. You know what I mean? Like, I know it's not. But she's like, I don't even care anymore. She's like, I just want to move on. She's like, I really would appreciate it if you just got rid of those so we can just all move on. He's like, I don't want to know anymore. I don't want to know anything about it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't care anymore. Just leave me alone. But then he says, she does broach to him like, okay, so you guys lie. This is not a beast.
Yeah.
She says, how far will these lies go? How far will you guys lie? What if there's more, of this? Like, what if there's more taint in the Astartes? You know what I mean? Like, how far are you guys willing to go to lie to protect, the honor of the Astartes, because the idea behind them is like they're supposed to be defenders of humanity. You know what I mean? Like, that's what they are there to do.
They're the image of the Emperor.
The big picture is like, we're going to push humanity out to the stars, but that's the goal, is humanity. So like, they're supposed to care for these people, but they don't. Some legions care more than others, but they don't really like, they're collateral damage in a sense, you know what I mean? But she's asking, like, how far will this lie go if it happens again? And he's like, this will never happen again. There's no way, you know what I mean? Like, but, she's like, I don't know. You know what I mean? But then he leaves. He's like, look, you're my friend. You know what I mean? Like, you know, like it's kind of like Carcassay in a sense. Like, hey, I got your back. We're friends. You know, if you need anything, I'm here for you. And then you get a little scene when he leaves. She opens up this little like drawer, and there's a shrine inside to the emperor. And she reads from this little pamphlet, which is called the Lectitio Divinitatis. And this is the first time you hear about this. It's probably existed already in the lore, but it's the first time you hear about it. So she's pretty much praying to the emperor, which is not allowed.
It's
right?
a big no-no.
Big no-no. But in the sense of a human, like, why would you not? You know what I mean? So, like, you got the Primarchs, or you got the Astartes, 8 foot tall, you know what I mean? That's pretty... they're not gods, all right, but that's pretty badass. And you got the Primarchs who are above that. Some of them have, like, magic powers. You know what I mean?
It's not magic.
Well, whatever. Yeah, some of them have powers, right? Then you take that another step. You have this one person who, as far as anyone's concerned, has been alive forever. You know what I mean? And he can do all this stuff. He's doing all these godlike things. So why would you not? But he's been squashing that. If you're into the current lore or play the games and all, it's a thing, man. It's like he is God in the current stuff. But back then, it's banned. But she didn't make it up. You know what I mean? But it's showing like, you know, hey, here's one person who's into it. And she's reading from this little pamphlet that they don't say it was in the pamphlet, but it pretty much has like chants and shit to like, you know, the emperor protects and, you know, he's God and all this stuff, you know. But little insight to how she's getting over it. You know what I mean? Like, yes, she was drinking, and it seemed kind of quick. Like, hey, I'm done with it. Yeah, I'm good. Well, wow, how are you? You know, that was quick. How are you good? And then you realize, oh, she's finding solace in her
the
faith
emperor.
of the emperor, because the emperor protects, obviously.
Obviously.
The chapter ends with Loken getting a little buzz in his little vox thing, saying, "Hey, get back here. The Blood Angels are here, but not only the Blood Angels, big boss Blood Angel." Sanguinius, who we mentioned earlier in one of the pictures.
Yeah. Who's totally super relevant. That's not foreshadowing at all.
But, okay, so that ends that chapter. And we start the next chapter with, once again, Loken is speaking with Mercedes, and this is where they discuss the triumph of Olenor.
So, Olenor, again, we were mentioned, I think, in the second paragraph of the first page, is a whole campaign that was years long. It millions of deaths, war, the scale of planets, and it was climax with this moment of victory and celebration.
Yeah.
And everyone thought it was like this huge moment where the emperor said I'm gonna make an announcement, and everyone's like, oh, Big Daddy, Big E's coming down here. He's gonna make an announcement. So they're like, well, we gotta prep.
Yeah. So it says the Mechanicum like leveled a continent and like paved it. You know what I mean? So you have a continent, paved smooth, an entire continent as a stage, and then they're geoforming and they're building like a stage and all, and then they got like every so often they got sticks with orc heads. Yeah. So the war in the system was orcs, and quick thing on orcs, like they're born from mushrooms. And they just fight. All you want to do is fight. Yep. And the more they fight, the bigger they get, like physically bigger. So this was like a universe, or not a universe, like a system-spanning war that came to the culmination where Horus and the Emperor like struck down inside the stronghold and like killed the main. Once they killed the main dude, who was taller than the Emperor, like a gigantic orc. Once they killed him, it kind of like rebel rouser, they all fell apart. And then the triumph was so it was like, okay, this was super cool. We kicked so much ass.
We're so cool.
We're going to make this big thing. So, it says here in the book that 100,000 Astartes were there, 8 million army regulars, legions, which is several, of Titan war machines. It said, like forest of steel. You got hundreds of tanks, thousands upon thousands of formations, warships flying in low orbit. So, it was like the biggest celebration of all. I can't remember how many, but it said 9 Primarchs were there. So, like I said before, about how a human never sees an Astartes. Astartes rarely ever see other Primarchs. This is the craziest thing ever. You know what I mean? 9 of the Primarchs, I think there's
12, isn't
12? I don't know. There's a lot. I think there's 20 or something. I don't know. How many legions are there? You can look it up. But, so 9 of these dudes, these godlike, 12-foot tall super dudes are there to celebrate this big culmination of this war, which is unfounded. I mean, like, there's wars going on all the time. People kick ass all the time. You know what I mean? So it's a big deal. And at that is where they're having processionals and blah blah blah, all this stuff, and that is where Big E says, "I'm out.
I'm done."
They doesn't tell him why. He just says, like, hey, he has a personal talk with Horus and tells him beforehand, but that's where he announces Horus as the War Master.
So yeah, that was. I didn't know that War Master was just a title. I thought that was like who he was the War Master, and then they go into detail about why Big E was the War Master. Like he was essentially.
Well, technically, yeah. Like there was. It was. Big E was out there amongst the stars, battling with his boys. He'd bounce around. You know what I mean? Like he had his own little crew, and then he would bounce over here and help fight you. And then everyone would be, yeah, cool. We get to fight with Dad. You know what I mean? But like the title, he kind of like made up. Like, hey, I'm gonna leave. I need someone in charge. And then he said, hey, it's gonna be you. It's gonna be Horus.
And again, just to paint a little more of a detailed picture, not everyone liked that. Not actually.
Yes.
I was weirdly 50-50 that not everyone liked that Horus was named the War Master. Some Primarchs felt they were slighted. Some thought that was a totally perfect move because they're like, yeah, Horus is kind of perfect. Yeah, he's the guy for the job. A little infighting on a political sense.
Yeah, I mean, like, so to give them character, like they are all aspects of of Big E, right? But they're also they're like bodies and their personalities are taken from different planets. So they're all kind of different, you know what I mean? But all of them are like alpha above alpha, you know what I mean? So like they're like, some were more like, I'm sure they're all probably like, damn, I wish that was me. But some were more like, all right, dude, I got my boy. You know what I mean? That's my boy. I'm cool. Others were like, oh, dude, what are you talking? It's me. You know what I mean? Like, so, but there was no like fighting. You know what I mean? It was more like squabble, like behind the scenes, like,
oh yeah,
hey man, Horus sucks, dude. I would have done better, but but that's it. It says here there were 20 original, and then 2 were disbanded. There's 18, so half of the people, half of the legions representation of their biggest, baddest bosses were there at the Triumph. So yeah, so they kind of go through that. It's like 10, 15 pages or whatever of talking about the Triumph, and then we jump back to once again back on murder.
We're back on murder,
and then this is like a good bolter porn part because you have the War Master and his boy Sanguinius are now down there, and they're just like wrecking. It says murder is murdered. That's what they say. You know what I mean? Like, so they come down, and it's like, as bad as these bugs are, it's like, it's not even a test. You know what I mean?
No.
They're just mad, but it's like cool. They have cool description of them, brothers fighting and all that stuff. I saw on one of the pages, it describes Sanguinius with black hair.
Yeah,
which
so I
was
saved
like,
it. Yeah,
I was funny. I was like, is that like I wonder, was that just he? There was no description of him, and then they wrote it and they changed it because he doesn't have black hair. I guess you can argue that, but in that book he does. But every other picture you see of
he's
him,
blonde as hell.
yeah, you know what I mean. So I just found it kind of weird, like. I'm also funny, like they didn't like just change that word in later productions of this book, you know what I mean? Like, but yeah, I saw it, like black hair. Like,
Yeah, one of my favorite excerpts is when he sees he meets Saul and Torgodon, and then he's just talking about his sons, like how he sent part of his legion down there, and they got just destroyed. They're up there still on the tree feeding the birds. And he goes, his long black hair was pressed down by the weight of the shawl, gold chain he wore across his head.
Does he have like fake
like
tears?
Oh yeah, and then he says he had marked his cheeks with gray ash in the morning. And then my favorite is he has an attendant. An attendant stood by with ink pot and brush to paint the ritual tears of grief on his cheeks. So he's already on the planet. And
some dude
someone like walking around and he's like, oh hey, your highness, your makeup's off. And he goes, no, I have real tears. He turned not to his brother Horus but to Torgodon. Show me, Tarek. and then he looked upon his dead brothers.
Yeah, so Sanguinius is like very. So they're like the Blood Angels are like.
They're Dracula. They're
Dracula, but they're also like he's like big into. They're all like
arts.
Yeah, they're like this guy can sculpt and this guy can paint and
Well, they're sexy Dracula.
Oh,
They're not Nosferatu. They're the high arts.
They're like Bram Stoker like style.
Yeah.
Very elegant. Yeah, they're very elegant, but they're not like over pompous. They're kind of like a little emo-ish, but like very like Baroque. Everything they do is what I mean. And then like their deep dark histories is like they're vampires.
That's a little bit of a spoiler. So sorry, but they're totally not vampires.
Yeah. But so during this campaign, War Master's like, I am gonna fucking rip Fulgrim a new one. I'm like this is because it's bullshit. You know what I mean? But Sanguinius is like one of the people who, during the triumph, is on his side. He's like he thought that Horus would be a good point. A lot of people thought he would be good.
Yeah, a lot of people wanted Sanguinius.
A lot of people think Sanguinius embodies the Emperor more than anyone else. But he's like, he's down for the cause. He's got his buddies back, and he talks him out of it. You know what I mean? He says, cool your jets. We don't need like this is a good time for you to show restraint because. Before becoming War Master, Horus is like the best warrior.
Oh yeah.
So he has that already. They know he's like a badass. They know he can be like mean and stuff. So he's like, hey man, this is a good time because now you gotta cover a lot of facets. You know what I mean? You're in charge of us, even though we're equals. We're all brothers, but you're in charge of us. So this would be a good point for you to like not rip him in two and yell at him and all like, show some restraint. Show that you can be a diplomat, not just a general. You know what I mean? And there's also where he talks about, he mentions that, hey, this would be a good time to mention that name change.
Oh yeah, your rebranding campaign.
Yeah, rebranding campaign. Because it seemed like they discussed it before. You know what I mean? Like,
they didn't mention this.
They didn't mention it, but it seemed like from their conversation they talked about it before, and that like, hey man, this would be a good time to like we talk about changing your legion's name to like solidify. You as the War Master, like not be a Luna Wolves anymore. I mean, I don't know if they do it right here.
No, I think they do it after the part 3.
Okay, all right.
Part 3.
But so they're as bad as they are, it takes a while. It's not like they go down there and they instantly destroy the.
It takes a couple months.
Yeah, they're fighting. These things are coming out of the ground. They don't know. They're just going. So 6 months into this campaign of Emperor's Children, Luna Wolves, now Blood Angels. A fleet of other peoples show up. Strangers, they say. Strangers arrive. And they're broadcasting some musical message. You know what I mean? They're like, what the fuck is going on? And they mention that the music is similar to the beacons. But the beacons they ignore because they're like, it's just some some music. I don't fucking know. It's like music. You know what I mean? Like they don't get it. So they're working on it, trying to figure out. They finally decipher the message. And the message is like, what have you done?
That is literally all it said.
Yeah.
What have you done?
And then that ends part 2. Of Horus Rising. We move on to part 3. It's called the Dreadful Sagittaire. And Sagittaire is what? Sagittaire is like the
Sagittarius.
It's like a centaur, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, part 3 is probably my least favorite part. I like I said, the bolter porn's not my favorite, but part 3 is so short. It is so short where it's only 3 or 4. It's 4 chapters.
Yeah.
So it's not. We're not going to do this chronologically. I think we can just talk it. We're introduced to the Interrex.
Yeah, the Interrex. So it starts off like it starts off like now murder's done, and the Imperials are traveling with the Interrex to an outpost. So the Interrex, you can glean that they're like some kind of big. They're not like oh we got a planet. They got like systems. You know what I mean? Because like a fleet shows up and they're like. Once we figure out how to talk to them, they're like, "Hey, okay, follow us. We're gonna go to we got a planet over here. We can go talk." You know what I mean? So while they're going across, the Mornival's meeting with Sanguinius and Horus, and they're like, "All right, what do we do here?" Because the hard and fast rule
Aliens
is alien. So we haven't mentioned this before, but like aliens are not tolerated. Like 0 tolerance. Like
not made in Big E's image.
Is it purge the Xenos?
Yeah.
Burn the heretic. Purge the Xenos. Cleanse the mutant.
Yes.
So So, but they're not exactly like
they're humanish. You know what I mean?
So they're human in origin,
Yes.
but have developed several alien customs and mannerisms from exposure to Xeno's species. So they have absorbed alien culture, technology,
Yeah, they seem like pretty reasonable and like smart.
proto-human, but
Yeah.
they are a very highly intelligent race. They're just definitely not what would fall under their
Yeah, so, like,
jurisdiction of human.
As they're meeting, Abaddon is like, "Yo, we need to fucking get rid of these guys." and then like actually he's like, they're arguing. He like storms off. You know what I mean? He's like, and he yells at like Horus, and that's like, "Whoa, what the fuck, dude? Like, this is the boss." You know what I mean? And I think he says something like, "If he wants to come back, he'd come on his hands and knees." You know what I mean? Like he's like pissed. You know what I mean? But anyway, there's like infighting because like so Horus is like. He mentions like he cannot make another mistake like getting Sanguinius or getting Sejanus killed. He can't make another mistake with the Whisperheads. Maybe we should try something different here. But some of the guys who tote the line straight, like in Abaddon's, like, what are you talking about? Like these people or these things are alien. Like we need to
kill
get
them.
rid of
We
them.
need
You
to
know
kill
what I mean?
them.
He mentions like peaceful crusading. He uses the Interrex as an example. You know what I mean? He talks about like, well, look at the Interrex. Like, so the planet Murder, it turns out it was a quarantine planet. So the Interrex found this planet, and they saw these crazy ass bugs. At the time, had space flight, and they're like, this is nuts. So they kind of went to war with them, but instead of like eradicating them, they fought them enough where they couldn't leave the planet. They left them be, and they left their little beacons. And Horus kind of likes it a little bit. Like, hey, like maybe that's something you.
Well,
can
he was
do.
like, "There's another way to do
Yeah, it
this."
has to. And then that pisses little Horus off. You don't like that. You know what I mean? Because like I said, and to their credit, like that is the line. You know what I mean? They're kind of looking at him like, what are you doing, man? Like you soft. You know, like this is not what we do. You know what I mean? So, as time goes on, there's actually going to be they have a meeting. So the Interrex come aboard the Vengeful Spirit, right? They're described as slim and handsome with piercing eyes, face tattoos, and they all have music that's played as they speak. So it's kind of weird, but like so in my head I picture like there's a
lute.
A dude next to you, and as you're talking, he's like playing inflection music to how you're talking. All right, and that's weird. The warriors are taller and dressed in armor. They got bows, and like the dudes laugh at it, like fucking bows. Like what are you talking about?
Yeah,
dude?
and
This
their
is-
armor's tiny. There's
Yeah, so
skinny little
they
fairy
kind of. I
boys.
mean, there's already in this galaxy, or in this lore, there's already elves. So like they're not elves, but they remind me of that kind of.
Yeah.
They're more sleekish, and probably like higher mobility, stuff like that. You know what I mean? And then also come behind them are like these big troops, and they're the Imperials are like wondering like what are they, and they actually tell the Mechanicum guy like, hey, I think those are like artificials. Like let's go, we should take a look at them. You know what I mean? Like let's see who that is. You know, so they're talking and the music's weird, and the Interrex is like, hey, we can like knock this off. You know what I mean? But like Horus trying to be diplomat, it's like no, like we'll work through it. He introduces himself as War Master, and they're like,
That's kind of a fucking.
yeah, they're like, what? They're like, is this like a military? Like, is this whole thing like a military conquest? And they're like, no. He says it has a military wing.
He's like, "Hi, I'm Mr. War Master. I don't only do war."
But yeah, so they're taken back by his title. They're taken back by them in general because they're like these big brutes. They meet him wearing like this crazy armor, and that's how they roll because they like subjugate through intimidation, and if that don't work, they subjugate through violence. You know what I mean? So like. The Interrex are like way different. They're like taken back. But Horus is like trying to turn their leaf. He's like trying like okay, he's like oh yeah, I'm the War Master, but no, I'm not like it's not all I do. I do more than that. You know what I mean?
I do logistics.
Yeah,
like
so they meet and they have some talks, and the Interrex tell them they know of Terra, that they have like ancient like history of them coming, it's like lore from, it's like mythology, you know what I mean? It's like, oh, way back, in the day, we used to live on this planet, you know what I mean? So they see them as cousins, they see the Imperials as, distant cousins, and so things are looking good. Then they talk about, like, the heavies aren't robots. They take their helmets off, and they're things called Kinderbrek, which are, like, these like
They're like horse people, or like
monkey kind of like. I think I have a description of them here.
but yeah, definitely they're not human.
Well, it says hefty simian things, with eyes so oddly sunken beneath big brow ridges that they were just sparks in the shadow. Their flesh was blue-black and deeply creased, with fringes of russet hair. Mouth and nose was one organ, a trifold split at the end of their blunt jaw snouts, capable of peeling back, wet and pink to sniff, and opening laterally to reveal a comb of small, sharp teeth like a dolphin's beak. I don't know.
Purge the Xenos.
Yeah,
Like that's an alien.
Yeah, so they're kind of like you know, simian like
Simian is like monkey related. Like
so
looks monkey like.
So like kind of they're like monkey-ish with dolphin heads. They're weird, you know what I mean? And like a lot of people at this little meeting are like, "What the like? No,
that's good.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Yeah. So much to surprise though of everyone, Horus, he apologizes to them for like breaking their reserve. He's like, "Sorry, man," you know, and like a lot of people are shocked, like, "What the hell, dude?" Because like a lot of people see this, like from his mind, he's starting to feel pressure of doing everything right. And then he's thinking, is it always right to just be throwing bodies at everything and destroying everything? But when he proposes that, or he's not asking permission, but when he's showing that, a lot of his people are like, what are you doing, dude? Like, this is not what we're supposed to do. Like, those things should be destroyed.
That's,
you know what I mean?
That right there, my bolter, him.
Yeah,
we're good.
You know what I mean? So, we're still traveling closer and closer to this outpost. Loken is starting to see like the burdens that are put on the War Master. He's getting like aid requests from other legions, advice from his brothers. He's also getting so back home they have the High Council of Terror, and they're like, "Hey man, like that planet, you know, back there you subjugated. Like, where's the taxes? You know, we need money, tax. You know what I mean? Like so." It shows this other side of like, you know, like now he's War Master. He has to do all the shit that like the Big E would do. That probably was like just like easy for him to do.
He could just close his eyes.
Yeah, you know what I mean. But like it's showing that it's taxing him like to answer questions and send aid and deal with bureaucrats. And like, he don't want to deal with bureaucrats, but this is like his job, and it's showing like the stress added on to his already like burdening schedule and all, you know, and just showed a little insight in that. And then we meet Erebus. Erebus, he joins the Legion as like an advisor, and he's really liked. So Erebus comes from a Legion called the Word Bearers, and they're like space priests,
Space monks.
which is weird. In the timeline, I don't think it's happened yet, but later on they'll be rebuked. Or no, it
already happened.
It already happened.
The,
Okay,
the humbling or whatever.
Yeah. So their thing is they see the Lactitio Divinitatis, or I'm sorry, they see the Imperial Truth as like the one way, like everyone does, but they are very serious about it. They take your planet over, and then they hang out, and they make sure that everyone is in line, and they don't necessarily say the Emperor's a god, but they definitely
want to.
They definitely want you to worship, and then they have a lot of like Biggie worship and all, and they get slapped down because they're really slow at what they do. They talk about, other books talk about their numbers, like, hey man, like we've done 50 planets, you only done 20. Well, they're thorough. But they get a rebuke in the timeline before this, but it comes in their book from Biggie pretty much saying, look dude, I am not a god. Knock it off. And that throws them into a spin, which we'll talk about later. But anyway, Erebus is like, he's a chaplain, which if you know, military chaplains, like, you know, which is weird because there's not supposed to be.
I guess they use it as
in this sense, it's like a spiritual, like a moral.
Morale.
Kind of, yeah,
it's a morale guy.
Yeah,
He's the morale guy.
Yeah, he's like first chaplain Erebus. He's sent there because everyone likes him, and he's just there to advise and like hang out. And it's not just him. I think he's got like a ship with him. You know, he's got some boys. You know what I mean? Like,
they do that a couple times throughout the books too. Is they'll do like a foreign exchange student program.
Yeah,
is what I think about, and they're like, space wolves with like Emperor's Children or. And again, it's 100% a way to like, hey, look, this is those guys. You know those guys.
Yeah. Buy this model.
Buy this one. Hey, this is totally not for sales.
Yeah.
But no, Erebus, man. I picture him as he's that really likable guy, but man, he loves starting shit. God, he gossips.
Yeah.
He's a drama queen.
Yeah, I picture him. I don't know, physically. I don't know. I mean, he's like described as like bald head. They are covered in tattoos. Whatever. But I picture him like in Game of Thrones. That dude.
Varys.
No. Kind of like that. Also like the Littlefinger guy.
Littlefinger?
Like
Oh.
super. Like he's
Creepy.
super good at like subterfuge.
Yep.
And knows how to talk to you. That knows how to talk to that person and make that person hate you. You know what I mean?
Oh,
Like
yeah.
he's really good at that. He's like a snake. You know what I mean?
But everyone loves him.
Well, yeah. Well, so at this point, like everyone loves him, but I mean, if you're listening to this, you know anything about 40K, he's like the most hated.
He's the fucking worst. He's the guys. He's the worst. Guys and girls. He's the worst.
Yeah.
I can't stand him.
But we get a scene where you got some little wolves, some Emperor's children, and Erebus all sparring in the cages, and it's a cool scene. So you got Lucius versus Erebus. And it shows Erebus's martial prowess as well, because he does lose, but Lucius is like the best, you know what I mean? But like he doesn't get whooped on, you know what I mean? And they call out Loken, like, Loken, you're next, all this stuff. And there's a cool scene because he's like, Lucius being very straightforward and all. And Loken says like, hey man, there's more than one way to win the fight. And he's like, whatever, dude, you know what I mean? So the fight starts, and before anything happens, he just like punches
him in the nose,
right in the face.
He's like, all right, I'm gonna get ready and get set. And I think before the match starts, he just punches him in the face.
Yeah.
And he's like, that's not fair. And he's like, I don't care. I won.
Yeah, and it's a cool little insight to like how each of the legions operate differently. You know what I mean? Like the Emperor's children, would rather like take 10 paces and then turn around and fight. While Little Wolf's like, hey man, I want to win. I'm going to win.
I'm going to fight.
I know you're better than me with a sword, so I'm just going to punch you in the face. You know what I mean? Like, it's very simple, That gets Lucius pissed off. So now you got, like, this little... Lucius don't like Loken. You know what I mean? Like,
little tiff.
Yeah.
Oh, Lucius.
So we finally get to the one of the outpost worlds on a city called Zenobia Principalis.
Oh, my. It's an alien. Purge the Xenos. Yeah. It's simple.
So they're going to hold a summit with the Imperials, right? And the city is very impressive. The Imperials describe it as like it's lush foliage with a city like built into it, so it's like, kind of like a amalgamation of like brick, but also trees. You know what I mean? Like the city, like the buildings are kind of like covered in vines and greenery, but not like overgrown. It's like it's like nice. You know what I mean?
It's Rivendell. They're in Rivendell.
Yeah. You can kind of say like that. You know what I mean? So the War Master now, he comes down, instead of bringing like all the brutes, he brings like iterators and remembrancers, and he's dressed in like robes now. You know what I mean? So he's trying to be like, hey, I know before you saw me like this, and I know I'm called the War Master, but check this out. I got a bunch of artists,
war people.
Yeah,
not war people.
Now he's got his boys with him still. You know what I mean? But like normally they come down like boom, like hey, look at this. Now he's more like trying to show a softer side, and they're met very well. They have a parade through the city. They're shown around. They're impressed with their engineering, their highly technological society. They go to a place called the Hall of Devices, and it's a museum of weapons and armor. And the Interacts bring them there because they're like, oh, well, these guys, they like this kind of stuff. You know what I mean? But they also kind of like, it's kind of like a snub. Like, yeah, this is like, we don't use this stuff. You know what I mean? Like, this is a museum where we have weapons because we are beyond weapons. You know what I mean? Like, so it's kind of like twofold. I feel like they're like, well, I feel like they had to mean like, hey, where should we bring these guys? I'm like, well, take them to the museum.
They're the war people.
Yeah,
show
bring
them
them to the
war
museum
stuff.
where the war stuff is. But it's also like a little snub. Like,
Yeah.
here's our war stuff, but it's kept behind cages because we don't, like we figured out ways to resolve our issues without weapons.
And then they show, my favorite is, so like they're walking through and they're like, yeah, here's this gun, here's this, oh, here's this super important, terrible sword that's totally not going to end universes.
Yes, okay, so near the end of the tour, they go into an area of the Kinderbrek. So the Kinderbrek are like really, really, really smart. Like they're like super smart technology race. So they take them there, and there's a bunch of weapons there that don't even look like weapons almost. Like, benign things that like they're surprised. But yeah, they introduce them to the anathema. And they're like, oh yeah, it's like a knife, like a short sword kind of thing, like not too like, it's like unassuming, but they describe like how it works is you can speak to it, and you can say the name of your enemy, and then this sword will hurt that dude or gal, whatever, and nothing to do about it. You know what I mean? Like that's how like crazy technology these people have. They can just make these weapons like that. And then so time goes on, and these guys are like they're just like at arm's distance. You know what I mean? Like no one knows what to do. You know what I mean? The Imperials are like, hey, we probably should just wipe these dudes out. You know what I mean? Like
He's like, yeah, this is cool. Can we kill him?
Yeah. You know what I mean? But like, so the War Master is insisting on no. We're going to figure something out. They're like, well, why? Like, they're not like, they're saying that they're part of the humans, but they're not like committing to becoming part of Imperium. Something has to give here. You know what I mean? So the War Master decides to have like dinner at some big wig's house, a general.
Yeah, and then Logan dips. He's like, I'm gonna go walk the perimeter.
Well, so I think him and Turgaden are like, so like, I think it's like a personal. I think it's like War Master and General Naveed.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously, they're not friends yet, so both have like little attaches of like like Secret Service. You know what I mean? So Logan's like walking around, doing his perimeter checks, like do. You know what I mean? Like, like so. And he bumps into this guy named Tull, who is a guard for the other guy. He's like also doing the same thing. You know what I mean? And so they're chatting and all, and they start like the conversation starts moving towards chaos. Mm-hmm. Or what is chaos? Like as the Imperials call it the warp. These guys call it chaos. You know what I mean?
With a K.
Yeah. Is it with a K?
Yeah, they pulled the Mortal Kombat on you. And said there's no C's in this universe anymore. So so I have that whole little section right here. And he goes, you regard it as a joke, an old throwback to enlightened days? And then Toll, our alien friend, goes, not a joke, just an old-fashioned alarmist approach. It interacts as a mature society. We understand the threat of chaos well enough and set it in its place. And so that's the first time we put chaos as a entity or as a negative being. And
well, also, yeah, as like a consciousness. You know what I mean? Up until now, it's been like, okay, we travel through it. Psychers grab power from it, and it can be dangerous, but it's not intelligent. It just does it. It is what it is.
It's like 4G.
It's like raw energy. Yeah,
it's like 4G. And you're telling me 4G can take over my house?
Yeah, it's just raw energy. But this guy, and he said they learned it from the Eldari, which are the elves.
Oh yeah. Hey, by the way, Eldar, we have elves.
Yeah. So they said they learned that it has a consciousness. And they call it the Annihilator, right?
Yeah.
The Ultimate Annihilator or something?
So they say, no starfaring race in the cosmos can operate without understanding the nature of chaos. We thank the Eldar for teaching us the rudiments of it, but we have recognized it soon enough without their help. So they're saying, hey, dummy, how do you not know what this is?
Yeah. They're like, he's like shocked like that the Imperials have gotten this far in their endeavor and not realize that chaos is nefarious. You know what I mean? Like, it's not just random energies. It's actually alive, and it wants to destroy everything. That's what it does. And then that, like, they had that conversation, and then told like, oh,
like, you generally don't know.
Like, all right. He's like, man. He's like, this is why. He's like, so like, chaos is very sneaky and shifty. And we kept you at bay because we thought possibly, maybe, that you were an agent of chaos just trying to be like sneak into us. But he's like, by talking to you and look on your face, I can see that you are just ignorant. You know what I mean? Like, you're just a bunch of dummies who don't know. We gotta go talk to our bosses. Like, this will clear it all up.
He's like, we are so glad that you're...
Yeah, like, this will clear it all. We'll tell you about it. You'll understand, and now we can be buddies, and we can move on from this. And now you guys know about chaos, because that's good, because it's bad,
He's like, yeah, chaos is the damnation of all mankind. Chaos will outlive us and dance on our ashes. All we can do and all we can strive for is to recognize its menace and keep it at bay for as long as we persist.
Yeah.
And that's it. Happy ending. They held hands.
Well, yeah,
and
so
they unite.
It's all looking good. You know what I mean? Like, oh, cool. We figured out, why they were keeping us at bay, and now we can be buddies. But no, he gets a little boop, 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 in his box or whatever.
In their alien box, it was their VO. I don't know.
Their VO. And then, he's listening to a private conversation, and then he's like, hey, give me your gun, dude. Don't even, And he's like, what? So, obviously, he refuses. What are you talking about? And then he's like, look, our hall devices where all of our crazy weapons, it's on fire. And, we know it's you. And Logan's like, he's denying it and all, but it ain't happening. So they're gonna start fighting. They start fighting. It turned out to be a really fair fight. You know what I mean? Like before they were talking about how these guys were dainty and all, but like they're really fast and they're hitting really hard. So, but Logan wins obviously because he's the hero.
Yeah, he's Captain America.
But he incapacitates him. He doesn't kill him. He like jacks him up. You know what I mean? Like it says incapacitate. So he knocks him out, and he's like, all right, we got, he's doing his stuff. He's trying to find his stuff's being jammed. Obviously, he's trying to find the War Master, trying to find anyone to help out. He finds some more. He runs into more Interrex. They're shooting these what they thought dainty bows. And they're like badass, like like laser. And they got the. They have warriors who are like centaurs.
Yeah, they're like horse people.
Yeah,
that are also shooting not magic. Yeah, not science bows.
Yeah, so now it's like a big fight, and they finally Torgadon and him get into the main dining hall wherever they're at, and they get the War Master, and they're like, hey, we gotta get out of here. He's not happy. He's screaming, yelling.
He's trying to diffuse the whole situation.
To like, hey, this ain't, but these guys aren't having it. You know what I mean? Because and you gotta look at it from their end. You know what I mean? Like they thought that they meet these people. They look like conquerors. They say they're not. They aren't mentioned. They're not saying, hey, guess what? We know chaos is bad. We're not down with chaos. They're not mentioning it at all. And then all of a sudden, they're,
the Hall of Chaos weapons.
Their museum of weapons is on fire. So, it's justifiable. So, anyway, little fighting, they get out. They're moving out. They're retreating. He's yelling, this is a mistake. You know what I mean? He's screaming and all, you know what I mean? So Logan outside tells him, hey, I had a talk with this guy, and he's talking about all this stuff, and they said their hall device is on fire, and the War Master's like, well, we're going there. And I can only imagine, it's like, in my head, 10, 20 guys, right? Like a little small, and they're like bouncing through the city, and everyone in the city's like trying to shoot, trying to kill
these guys. I mean?
But they're so badass that,
He's like, we're going to go walk 6 city blocks to this hall that they think we set on fire, and we're gonna get the bottom of this.
Yeah, we're gonna figure this out right now. We're gonna go there and figure this out. So they're making their way. The War Master is like, he's like breaking down. You know what I mean?
I'm picturing
he's like
a man watching his magnum opus burn in his hands. He's like tried.
Yeah, and he says he screams to the sky, why have you tasked is with me, Father. Why have you forsaken me? Why is it too hard? It is too much. Why did you leave me? So, he's having this emotional crisis now as they are moving toward the Hall of the Vices. You know what I mean? They get there. He tries one more time to reason with them. Like, hey, listen, we didn't do this. Come on. And they're not having it. You know what I mean? Like they're angry. So he says this is a famous word he'll say a lot. He says, illuminate them.
he has a line of warriors with bolters behind him, and he goes, illuminate them.
Yeah, so they pretty much, they take out their opposition, and then they get out of there. And the last chapter of the book will end with, once again, Loken and Mercedes are recalling the fight. And she asked what was stolen. And they said, yeah, only one thing was stolen. And we didn't even take it.
Yeah, so super weird. Didn't take it. Yeah. Wasn't us.
Intel found out that only one thing was stolen. And, we didn't even do it. And he agrees to tell her more about what happened. Give her a full rundown on Zenobia. Zenobia. So the expedition is returning to Imperial space. All right. They did not commit to a full-scale war with the Interrex. And they're way too badass, to just take on with their they would have it has to be more of a thought out strategy.
Yeah, that's not something that one Legion can do.
You got to get the army in, you get everyone. You know what I mean? And this is where also they rename themselves. So Horus commits. He finally says, "All right, we're no longer the Luna Wolves. We are now the Sons of Horus. That's what we're called." All right. And at the very end of the book, to deepen the mystery and the secrecy of this book. Deep in the bowels of the vengeful spirit, we see Erebus, and he has the anathema.
Yeah, shocker. The big scary priest guy stole the one world-ending weapon.
Yep. So the expedition is going to make its way to Sardis to help someone out. But on behalf of Erebus, they say, hey, we got to make a small detour, if you don't mind, to a small moon in the Davin system. And then if you remember from the beginning of our podcast, when we were talking about the very, very beginnings, Davin was a place of import, we'll say. You know what I mean?
Again, I picture Erebus just like schmiegled up, you know, with like his precious in a dark, dank, humid engine room, just polishing the anathema.
It's in a box.
That's right. Yeah,
they don't even see it in a box. It's in a box.
He can't like. Yeah.
No one wants to touch it. You know what I mean? So it's in a box. But yeah, so he, you know, I mean, he stole it obviously, and then now he's directing them towards Davin, and we won't know what happens in Davin.
No, we'll
until
no
next
way
time.
to know.
All right, so that wraps up the novel Horus Rising by Dan Abnett. We're going to go through some like thoughts and feelings. So, what would you say if just straight out of 10? What do you think?
Okay, so there's
Or would you rather
okay, so
would you rather end it with a
no? I will.
review?
You got to start. Just cut and dry. Give the people what they want. 10 out of 10.
10 out of 10
Because you can't. Again, I have not had any Warhammer anything going into this book. On a literature standpoint, it's campy in the best way possible. Anything that's self-aware, where it can almost make fun of itself and still get going, is I'm a huge fan of it. You can't start a 64-book series without an absolute amazing foundation. Dan Abnett hits it out of the park. Again, this is my nerd rating. This is 100% like, as a fan of science fiction, as a fan of these types of novels, this is exactly what you need to do. I've read other series that I'm actually more of a fan of that have had way worse books that started the series. This is a perfect start to, at the very least, the Horus Heresy, because, I mean, I've already gone through 6 other books after this book now. And this is probably not my favorite, but the strongest. You can't start this huge, huge lore dump without some hiccups and without creating descriptions and doing introductions and creating like some sort of definition for things that you'll never understand because this is 6 YouTube videos deep and you need to talk to a guy who was there in the comic book store who's sweaty. No, you don't need to do that because Dan does it for you. You don't have to, if you don't want to, go into any more in this universe than what's in the novel. And I love that. The fun little, he leaves you little nuggets where if you want to scratch into that, like the Servitors, the Mechanicum, the other Primarchs, you don't even know that there's 20 Primarchs. You don't know. He just leaves that out there because if you want to do the research, do the research.
Yeah, he mentions for the part of Eleanor, he says 9 were there and the rest sent delegations. So like, yeah, like if you wanted to, you can be like, what others?
Are
Like,
there others? I don't know. Yeah. And so he kind of leaves it up to you, and I appreciate that. He doesn't gatekeep. It could have like been this super daunting like.
I mean, it could have been like
it could have been
pages.
800 to 900 pages.
Yeah.
But he also has the luxury of knowing he's going to be he probably has like a 6-book contract when he got this thing or whatever. But
yeah, I don't know. Yeah,
I'm not Oxford educated, so I don't know. But no, he does a great job of just saying, hey, here's the first book. This needs to be approachable to everyone to get them hooked into this series because you can't read this book and be happy with how it ended because it's the cliffhanger of all cliffhangers. You're like, all right, the big evil sword is with the big evil guy. What happens next? You got to know what happens next. And there's no weak points. There's points I don't like because I'm picky and I think that certain parts could have been more well defined, but that doesn't mean it's bad. It just means I have preferences. But yeah, I would say as a sci-fi novel, as an introduction to the Warhammer series, 10 out of 10. Did it the best job it could. And that's asking a lot because, I mean, you're telling you, hey, you have to start this.
Yeah, so I gave it a 7, and not. I mean, I got a couple of things like that could have. I mean, personally thought it better, but I wouldn't want to be this guy to write this book.
Absolutely, I would do
You know
not
what I mean?
envy
Like,
this
hats
guy.
off to Dan Abnett, like if, when it came up to him, like to write this, because I think this was like I would look more about. This might have been his first foray into. It is his first foray into Horus Heresy at all. So like, take it that way. Like you said, he has to be like, hey, we want to make a series that is not only we're going to get our fans. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's easy day. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can write anything almost. But, yeah, you got to be able to grab. We want new customers. We want, you know what I mean? Like, so, Games Workshop is in the model selling business. That's what they do. That's just all it is. That's when it comes down to it. I've read their reports and all. I own stock in their company. That's what they do. And then they do it well. And then everything else is built around that. So I love the lore and I like the game and all that stuff, but the people who are making decisions are thinking in that angle. You know what I mean? Like, damn, we need this book to get people to buy our stuff. You know what I mean? Like, that's why in these books, all the characters, you'll see you can buy models of all these characters because that's what they do. They're a model making company. They're not a game company. They're not a IP company. They're not a book company. They have wings of that, but their main thing is selling models. So hats off to him to be like, take that first step and be like, make this deep enough where people who know it are interested, but a newbie cannot get lost. And it's almost to that edge because there is a lot of stuff. And now, like I said, if you have the right mind, if you're just like, I'm just going to read this, and he does a well job. If you just read it and ignore the stuff you don't know, he tells you what you need to know. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to look in that stuff. But if you have the mind to be like, I need to know all this stuff, you're going to be, you just read his book with a computer open.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's not a good way to go about it. But I thought, you know, I mean, it was awesome. I 7 out of 10 because like 10 out of 10 would be like my favorite book in the world, and I'm not sure what that is, but I do like other stories in this series. But as a start, yeah, I mean, you know, and it ends perfectly because it makes you want to buy the next book.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
That's like that is.
So everyone who reads these books say you read the first 3. Some people argue 4 in a row. Boom, 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 boom. And then from there, you can break out into certain areas of the books because other books will cover different legions, different stories. But the first 3, and I said arguably the 4th, you should read as a session. And this book does that. It introduces it, tells you what's going on. It doesn't even get to any heresy.
There's no heresy. There's no heresy.
There's no heresy yet. But that's good. That makes you want to spend the $8 or whatever for the next book. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's smart. That's a good move. And yeah, it was well written. It had a good amount of like the bolter porn stuff, but not too much.
Not too much.
And it introduced the characters well. So I have like some goods, good intro, lots of mysteries, especially for newcomers. So like, you know, like if you're new to this, ideas of chaos, the lodge, the different Primarchs. You know what I mean? Like, it's really cool, and it lets you delve deeper if you want to. The only, like, the bad would be like it's tough to write for someone who's never ever, like, you know, just some person who's like, I'm a sci-fi nerd, I'm gonna go in the bookstore and just pick a book. It's good, but it could be a little hard if you're like never even.
Yeah.
But I imagine with today way information is distributed, like you'd be hard pressed to find someone who's like just grab this book and like never ever hear of anything at all. If you're in a sci-fi, you've probably played a video game that has these guys in it. Maybe you've you know, on the internet seen someone talk about this stuff. So it's kind of hard, you know what I mean? But I think that a problem, not with this book, but in general, writing about this stuff is writing the Space Marines. Because if you are a heavy fan of the lore as it's written in like the books for the games and all, they have no character.
Yeah, they are flat.
Yes, and that's not good for a book. That's not good for any kind of lore. You know what I mean? So they have to take liberties with certain guys in this series, like showing fear, even though they don't have fear. You know, like not being the best at making decisions, like getting shot up by a turret, like that. You know, if you're looking strictly at the lore, that probably never happened. If I've been fighting 200 years, I would know that there's a damn turret behind.
I can clear a room. I can clear a room.
Yeah, but you kind of have to. You know what I mean? Like you have to show character. Otherwise, what do you got? And that's why a lot of these, a lot of the really popular books are written, like the Gaunt's Ghost series, like is mega popular because that's written about soldiers. So like if you're reading that book, you might not be a soldier, but you are a person and you can like really relate. It's hard to relate to them, but I think he does a good job because I feel, you know, you feel the tension, you can feel the indecisiveness of Loken. You know, you can feel the little nuggets he drops of Horus like doubting himself. But if you're like coming from a strict lore side, you're like, no. this guy, these are genetically enhanced superhuman / gods that they wouldn't have. Like, he would have no trouble dealing with bureaucrats and giving. I mean, there's another Primarch named Rabute Golem, and there's books of him with 20 windows up on his computer.
Oh yeah,
and he's having a conversation. He's just like blah blah blah. You know what I mean? Like, so like, and that's cool. That's his thing. But like, technically, they would all be on that level of like, they probably wouldn't have too much stress of like, oh, my brothers are asking for help, and I got to talk to the army command. You know what I mean? Like, but you have to do that. You got to show that because you got to show how this guy is like at his pinnacle and how he starts to doubt himself and doubt what his dad told him to do, and that's how he goes into this decline.
And it all is from daddy issues. Really
but I see good stuff. I like cool scenes. I love the Terminators taking the Whisperheads.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. Like, I mean, just for the bolter porn, but also like it shows. I like when it shows the stark contrast, especially that scene, because it was like straight up normal humans fighting these guys. That was super cool. I like when Torgadon bows up to Lord Commander Eidolon. That's super cool to see that. You know what I mean? I really enjoyed that. And I also liked all the scenes where they showed the 40 chess level of Horus's mind, where he's like using his people and restraining his caller and all and stuff to like, get what he wants. You know what I mean? Like when he goes aboard the Emperor's Children's ship, he's not like just kicking ass and clearing fucking rooms and telling everyone they're assholes. He knows how to do it. Okay, here when he's aboard the ship before the Whisperheads, he purposely lets Loken step forward and be the one to call for action. That was really good, well written, because you could easily write him like crush. You know what I mean? But then you have this one-dimensional character who's like, oh yeah, obviously Horus Heresy. Look at this guy. He's just it makes him human, which is weird to the lore, but it's good for the book, and it shows that he's multifaceted and he has doubts in his mind, just like, and you can relate to that as a person. Even though reality. It's not reality, but if he were to exist, he probably wouldn't have any doubts because he's a goddamn demigod.
Super god.
Okay, so who was your favorite character?
Saul Good. Saul Tarvitz. Yeah.
On that little bit.
That little chunk.
I mean, he's like other books. He's way more fun.
Oh yeah, but he super fun little like. So to me, I was like, oh, this is a cool side character. Like my first time reading in this whole entire little universe, and I was like, hey, this guy's really funny. He's super cut and dry. He doesn't fit into this whole like perfection. We're gonna be the best. He's like, hey, what if I'm just good enough? Like, I really just want to be good enough.
There's a thing where he mentions about how Lucius is younger than him and he's below him in rank, and he knows that Lucius will outrank him. But he doesn't care. He says things like, "I'm fine being a line officer."
Yeah, he's like, I want to be a line officer, and I was like,
and he sees that as doing that job to the perfection is the perfection.
Yep.
I don't need to become
the best,
the Lord Commander. I just can be the best. And there's a lot to appreciate about that. It's like the someone who they're not the head of the company, but whatever they do it so good, and they've been doing it so long, and they're content with that. And that's like respectable. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to be like, oh, I just want to be the top of this and that. Like, no, you can do your job and do it so well that it in itself is the perfection.
Yeah, I think Saul, obviously Loken, but and then I think Tolgaten obviously is hilarious, but I think Saul is definitely my favorite character.
So I have Loken ? Because I guess it's the obvious choice, because he's but actually I think like for this book alone, I like Carcassonne.
Oh, absolutely.
I think he's the best character in the book because I like how he's flawed. You can relate to that. He's just, like most people have been in a situation where you open your mouth and you shouldn't have, but he has so much like respect. And then we didn't go deep into like his conversations with Loken. We kind of glossed over him because if you want to read the book, you should read the book. But he like near the end, he's kind of like not like challenging Loken, but he stands up and like he knows what's right in his mind. He knows what's right, and Loken respects that, and he stands up to Loken a couple times. You know what I mean? Like he and then further books he'll get more into like really speaking his truth. And I thought he was a really good character, like well written. Like at first I was like, oh, just this guy, like because like a lot of the remembrancers, like if you're reading this, you're like if you're in this stuff, you're like, oh, the Space Marines and all this stuff, and the humans are kind of like filled in there, and they're used for plot points and all. But I liked his development, from the very beginning. you see him as like this little tubby whiny guy who's like walking around and just like, this sucks and I can't write anything and all this stuff. And then as he's introduced to Loken, you start seeing like that he like, you know, comes more into his own and he's not afraid to speak the truth. And then the next book that'll even like progress even farther, you know, because he's like really
he really does take off too. I think Ignace, what a good name.
Yeah.
But yeah, he does create that. When you put a human character who is very relatable in an unrelatable situation, it does create grounding that you can relate to that perspective. You can see that perspective, and it also makes you realize how big everything else is. How out of world talking to an 8-foot giant, what that feels like, and have the gall to still say, "Hey, man, you guys are kind of wrong." That's huge. Really important character. Again, Dan does a great job of creating that character without it being forced. I think it's super easy to force that kind of stuff. Another thing I really liked was like, there's XYZ that he has to put into these books, and none of it felt forced. It wasn't like, hey, here's a Titan. Hey, here's a Mechanicum. It's like,
Yeah.
Hey, here's something you need to know. Moving on. But like, it's not in your face. It's not like a Marvel cameo where it's like, wow, look at the thing from this thing. You should know what that is. Moving on. No, it's just like mentioned, moving forward, keep with the story.
One, I would say, I wish they would have introducct Erebus earlier.
Yeah, he does just appear.
Yeah, because, okay, so, you know, like I said, this is spoiler, so we can kind of, we'll go a little further. Erebus is like the catalyst to the bad guy, okay? He is a bad guy. He's a bad guy, but he's a catalyst, as you'll see in the next episode. But by putting him right there at the end, it's almost like that ending is, you know, it's cliffhanger. That's cool. But I think it would have been cooler if he was introduced earlier, because then it would have been more shocker that it's him holding the knife.
Yeah, you're like...
You know, I mean, if he was like, you know, like however they wrote it, you know, they could have just said, hey, these guys are traveling with the word bearers, whatever, you know what I mean? And then he's in some of these scenes, like he's at this meeting and he's fighting with them on murder. You're like, oh, he's just, you know, he's like one of the guys. Because they mention how everyone likes him and he's well liked, blah, blah, blah. But like by introducing him so late, it wasn't, even the first time I read it wasn't really a shock. Because he's the only person. Now, like, if it was like, oh, it's little Horus holding the knife, and be like, oh, you know what I mean? Like, whoa, you know what I mean? But like, by introducing him so late and then having him hold the knife, it's kind of like, I just thought like
it did lower. It felt like it lowered the stakes for who did it.
Yes,
and I was like,
anyone else holding the knife would have been like, boom, like, whoa. Even if it's like, you know, what's that dude? Half heard, you know what I mean? Like, wow, maybe he wants vengeance because freaking
he's ignored.
Because right now you're like, okay, they introduce a guy at the very end, they say a little bit about him, and then now he's holding a knife. It's like, okay, I get it, he's a bad guy, but what is his motivation? You know what I mean? Now, they'll reveal that in later books, and maybe that was the purpose, but I think they could have introduced him earlier and just kept him as like a side character, pepper him in here and there, make you like him, you know what I mean? Like when he fought Lucius, that was cool. Like, oh yeah, Lucius, he's a dick, no one likes him. Maybe he could have like mouthed off the Lord Commander Eidolon a little bit, like, and then remember, like, oh man, yeah, that guy, he's like one of the guys. And then when you see him with a knife, you're like, oh, like shit, like that's weird. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like, why would him as being a thrown in character again? It's like, oh, of course. Well, that guy wasn't in the book the whole time.
Yeah,
so
the third act, mysterious dark priest is a bad guy.
Yeah, like, yeah, you know what I mean. And it's hard for me because like when I was reading, even when I was read the first time, like I already knew the lore behind the word bearers, and they're like, you know, they're baddies, so like you know it. But I think to a newcomer too, especially if it was just introduced early and then you got to like him a little more, you would have been a little more shocked that it was him. And it didn't like take away, but it added a little more flavor to it if it was like, oh, you know what I mean? Like would you imagine if it was like Loken holding the knife? Oh yeah, you know what I mean? Like, whoa, or I mean, not Lucas, he wasn't there, but like someone who wasn't there, who wasn't like Abaddon or Little Horus or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, or like a remembrance, or you know what I mean? Like with someone you've already seen and kind of like, okay, like he's on the team, she's on the team. By putting him at the end, it was kind of like, well, of course it's going to be him. Who else is it going to be? You know, like,
and it again, you're given the impossible task of like having to set the scene for the biggest betrayal ever, and it's like, I like how they make it obvious that Erebus is very much the bad guy. I get it, but having him put in so late does kind of hamstring his ability to have gravity to that twist. But I don't think that they wanted a twist.
Yeah,
It
well,
was-
and then I think like I said, they're Oxford educated. You know what I mean? But so I think they just wanted to play it out like, hey, here this guy comes in at the end, and guess what? That's the bad guy.
That's
Like, guess what?
You know what?
And then
there's
the next book. If you read the next book, you pay for that book, you'll find out more why he's a bad guy. But all you gotta know right now is he ain't a good guy.
He
You know what I
ain't
mean?
good.
So like, I guess it makes sense. You know what I mean? But that was like, I mean, there's really not a whole lot to critique. I was thinking in my head like that would have been like kind of maybe it would have been cooler. I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, but maybe it doesn't make sense to the story in the grand scheme of things. Because like the next book, and I think the third ever, like and there's plenty of books on Erebus and the Word Bearers. You'll see more of their motivation, which helps fill in those gaps. But I said I can't think of a good reason why not to put him earlier. It's just so. And in this book, you're kind of like maybe he's like one of your favorites, you know what I mean? Or maybe he's like someone you like, and then it's like, oh, and you get a little emotion, like, oh man, that guy, like, damn, dude, I like that guy, you know? Because right now it's like, if you know him, you don't like him already, because no one likes him. But if you don't know him, you're like, well, that's kind of like whoever that is, you know?
Yeah,
what I mean?
fuck
Like,
that guy.
Yeah, like who's that guy? Yep. You read like 2 paragraphs, you're like, yep, and then here comes Erebus. Okay, and yeah, everyone likes Erebus, and he's a chaplain. And it's like, okay, and then keep reading. You don't really mention Erebus, and in the end, it's like Erebus holds a knife. You're like, okay, like, you know,
Yeah,
maybe that's on purpose. I don't know. You know what I mean?
I mean, yeah. Again, I appreciate this novel knows what it is, and they're like, hey, you know what's not going to surprise people? The lore that's been the Horus Heresy. There's a heresy, and I think that they're like, hey, you know what? We're just gonna like not have any subterfuge with that, and let the drama take place.
Well, yeah,
where it
because
needs
it's plenty
to.
of drama.
And he's
you
like,
know?
we don't need to like it's not a surprise that Erebus is the bad guy. They're like, maybe we should let's just make him bad.
I think is cool too is when they wrote this book, let's say good idea for a money standpoint. Like if you were to just pick it off the shelf and you see the name Horus Rising, Horus Heresy, you start reading, and then the book ends with no heresy.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
like,
I was like,
that's like
first time I read it, it blew my mind.
yeah. But that's it. That makes like that's smart. 'Cause that makes you like you literally probably want to go out instantly. And like, well, I gotta. When's the heresy start?
When's the heresy in?
When are they gonna start heresy in? I gotta go get that. You know what I mean? So that was really smart. And yeah, if they didn't, and let's just say they, you know, I think the second book. What's this one?
This False Gods is number 2.
No, I'm saying this is 410. If they combine them two, it'd be like 900 pages. You know what I mean? And that's very daunting.
Hey, that's a Stephen King novel.
Exactly. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? And like some people who even are, you know, some people who like to read sci-fi or horror or whatever, like that might be too much. You know what I mean? Like I read The Stand once a long time ago. I don't remember, but like that was like tough. And It too. I read It, and that's like 1,000 some pages. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And it's like, and I had to like tell myself I am going to read
this
It wasn't
book,
like one I looked on the shelf like, yeah, let's read it. You know what I mean? It was more like, oh man, I've seen this movie when I was a kid. I've seen the TV movie a million times. Like I'm going to do it. You know what I mean? It was good, but it was a lot to get through in one sitting because you look at this massive book. You know what I mean? So yeah, it was probably a very smart way to just like end it there.
Yeah.
Because it's definitely cliffhanger. You know what I mean? Like we haven't, you know, we're going to Davin. What's Davin? Who knows? You know, it's a moon or so, a moon of Davin. Sorry, but we don't know. You know what I mean? Obviously, the knife is going to be important, and Erebus is the bad guy. But like, that's all you know. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're like, how is so?
And then if you listen to like what we were saying before, if you know a little bit, it says Horus took a third of the guy, you know, the army, whatever. So like, man, like that's a whole nother aspect we haven't talked about. Because right now, all you got is one bad guy with a knife, and the knife was to kill people. So like, what? You know what I mean? Like, how's this guy going to turn against the Emperor if this guy's going to kill him? Because like you would assume like he's going to say Horus and then go stab him. You know what I mean? But like, how's that going to work?
No, it's yeah, my favorite part of this so-called cliffhanger is, yeah, how does a knife with one evil priest lead to an intergalactic civil war? And that, I think, leaving the mystery at that point and not, oh, how did Erebus become bad? They wanted to focus on how is this one determined bad guy with a knife gonna cause
shape the whole
the whole next 10,000 years of war.
Yeah.
And I think that was a good choice to leave the focus on that and not on how did he get the knife. It's just, no, he's bad. He has a knife.
Yeah. Like, just get that out of the way.
Yeah.
We don't need that to be a mystery. You know, he's got the knife. He's the bad guy. We'll show you more mysteries. and plot twists and stuff along the way. But yeah, I get it. I guess I get it.
And you know, this all could have been avoided if Sir Janus just didn't die.
There'd be no books in.
And I say, yeah, you know, Sir Janus actually did mission accomplished, no war, didn't die.
If the first planet they went to, the little E Emperor was like,
oh yeah,
cool, man. Yeah,
I'll join.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah,
yeah,
like
and roll credits. But yeah, that is Horus Rising, book 1.
So coming up next will be False Gods, the second book in this series. That one is by Graham McNeil, another like heavy hitter for Black Library. I'll do some research and find out what else he's written, see what college he went to. And we'll find out from that book what happens on Davin doesn't always stay on Davin.
That is very much the case. But yeah, we appreciate your time. Thank you for listening. Jason, thank you for sitting here and talking with me. And again, we appreciate your time going down the deep, dark path that is Warhammer. We do hope that you decide to listen again.
Yeah, so if you like everything and all, or if you don't, like hit us up or a review on the podcast app of your choice. I'm going to edit this and put it out on all the things that I can put it out on. Haven't figured it out yet, but I'll get there. Keep a lookout if you like what we're doing. We got an IG. It's called the Heresy Hangout, so I'll try to post some updates there. And we hope to tune in next time.
All right, thank you.
Adios.